All right. Welcome. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to episode number 30 of the Metaverse Nomads live stream. However, this week actually represents the 37th consecutive week that we've held a live weekly show here, uninterrupted, about our favorite blockchain projects. This week, we have a great show that we pre-recorded on Tuesday to accommodate Michael Wagner, CEO of Star Atlas, to accommodate his schedule. And it was a great interview. And so we're going to do two things with that show. We're going to go over it here together, and so we can pause and have some comments about it. But also, we've got that the interview in its entirety that will be posted live, or be posted, not live. It'll be posted to the YouTube channel, Metaverse Nomads. However, before we get to that interview, I feel a personal responsibility, and I know with also the support of the other nomads here, that we want to take a moment to acknowledge what is happening in Ukraine. For me personally, I feel it is a direct attack on democracy and freedom as a whole. And what's happening there is actually really tragic. I have friends in Kiev right now. My fiance is both Russian and Ukrainian by way of the annexed Crimea. And I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in Kiev this past 2 years. And, my heart just absolutely goes out to the resilient, proud, and determined people of Ukraine. And in fact, it's awe-inspiring to see the resolve that the Ukrainian people have right now to stand and to fight and to protect their way of life. And as a member of the crypto community, there are ways that you can support the Ukrainian effort directly with donations in crypto. In fact, there are links and descriptions with wallet addresses that are public on the verified Twitter account of the Ukrainian government and its military. The crypto community has already shown up with nearly 18 million in crypto. And so there'll be some links down below. And also, we're going to take a little bit of time before we get to that interview and talk a bit about some of the things that are related to the metaverse and what's going on in Ukraine right now, because crypto and Web 3.0 and the metaverse, as things unfold and develop, is becoming a powerful force in the world and a way of life that has far-reaching influence. And so we've grabbed a couple of talking points today as it relates to some of the current events and news about how crypto is actually a big influence in what is going on right now, but not just crypto, the internet as a whole. But before we get started, jump into that, how are you guys? We've got Ray, Fancy Hat, and Bonafide here with me.
I'm doing great. So I was here, but yeah, well said about Ukraine. I have a lot of friends from Ukraine as well that live in my neighborhood, and it's terrible what's going on. But yeah, much love to everyone out there around the world, not just Ukraine. But for the last couple decades, it seems like there was always a certain part of the world that had a spotlight on it. So stay strong out there. But I'm doing great, and it's good to be here this week.
Yeah, I have friends both Ukrainian and Russian, and it's funny because I always open with good morning, not because this podcast is at 10 a.m. for me, but because we're all so early to the metaverse. Then I always say we're all going to make it, not because of anything other than the fact that if you're here now during the creation of the metaverse, you're in a unique position to shape it and reap the benefits of an early adopter. And some people might think my normal opener is a little too positive. Yet I invite you to realize that Ukraine has asked for and is accepting Bitcoin donations via a Twitter post. Elon Musk is out there vowing to provide and advance Starlink services to the Ukraine via Twitter. And people being physically displaced around the world, yet their digital assets are still safe and protected if they hold their private keys. So if you're fortunate to be watching this show with us today and enjoying the conversation, good morning. We're all going to make it.
Yeah, happy to be here on the 30th episode. I prefer calling it 30th XXX.
Yes, indeed. So, one of the things I found interesting, as it relates again to what's going on is it's interesting when you're trying to move support to a country. One of the fastest ways that you can actually support a country financially now seems to be through crypto. And so when Ukraine took to Twitter and other means to seek support, they've actually found themselves in a position now where they've been able to raise something in the neighborhood of 17.2 million, and that was just as of earlier today. So that number is actually probably higher now. And so, as I mentioned before, anyone that is actually looking to support yourselves, you can actually go to Twitter so that you can see that it is the actual legitimate wallet addresses that are being used for support there. So yeah, it's just fascinating to see that, for all of those folks out there that still are, as you say, good morning, that aren't here yet or aren't awake yet, crypto is here to stay, and it's a big player in world events now, and it's going to continue to be for the foreseeable future in many other ways, for sure. One of the other things that was interesting of note is that Pussy Riot spearheaded an NFT sale, and there's just one of the NFTs currently has a high bid of $2.7 million. So it's interesting, again, just to see the different ways that blockchain and NFT projects are playing a role. As you mentioned, Bonafide, there was a call out to Elon, and his response was literally within 10 hours of saying, hey, Starlink services are now active in Ukraine and more terminals are en route. And so that's a pretty fascinating thing, because I don't know if you guys remember all the way back to even during the unrest in Egypt, which is one of the first times where Twitter was really put to the test, because Twitter became kind of boots on the ground. If you really wanted to know what was happening, you were able to use Twitter to get those updates. And so one of the things that was immediately put in place was the government wanting to shut down the internet so that there wasn't news going in or out. And also right now in Russia, we have the Russian government wanting to stop access to all of the main social media accounts. So basically that, if you're within the country of Russia, you're not seeing what the rest of the world thinks of what is going on. So by activating services for Ukraine, that gives them the ability to share what's going on. But what I think would be more interesting is if these same services were provided to the people of Russia, so that they too could have uninterrupted, unblocked internet without having to use a VPN.
You took me right. You took me right back there, Jesse. I know I said I wasn't going to say it, but I'm still kind of salty with Elon about playing with the crypto markets last year. But you see something like this, he's modern day Iron Man. It's crazy. I never thought I'd see things like this in my lifetime.
Right. Yeah. To have that kind of influence and to be able to wield it in a moment's notice. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I'd like to make a point on the slide before this with Pussy Riot, that there's so much money that wants to go to a good place in times of need. And you'll be surprised that 1,000 ETH is even possible for one person to have, because that happens often too with NFT projects. It's not just a cumulative donation that adds up to 1,000, but there's a lot of people out there who have made money in crypto, or even if they didn't come from crypto, they just want to have their money put to a good cause, or donated, or to help in some type of way. So on the decentralized Silk Road, it's the best way to do it, because your money's going to go to exactly where it needs to go from where it came from, and that's from your own personal wallet. And then from that point on, it's up to whoever received it and what they're going to do with it. But in this situation, it's just more power to the Ukrainian government to do what they need to do with it.
Yeah, it looks like just when Fancy brought that up there, that the bid is already up over 3 million. And what's fascinating about that is just like when these crypto payments take place, remember back in the day, I don't know if you ever tried to move money anywhere across countries and you're using the traditional means, it could take a while. As we're now, this is immediate support that can be put in play however they see fit. So it's a different world now with crypto involved, for sure.
Yeah, it's a shame that adoption is going to come from the angle of suffering and maybe war. It's like more adoption might take place when we hit rock bottom as a society, other than just adopting.
There's a saying that supports that necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, isn't war usually a vehicle for human advancement? I mean, that's usually where we get the bulk of our technological growth is during times of war or prior to them.
Yeah. Another thing that's interesting here is that this is actually within Russia, but it's actually the same thing is happening in Ukraine as governments become unstable, and as we saw the stock market and the ruble itself crash 45%. This is where people realize that fiat currencies are at such substantial risk, and this is another reason that people will start finding their way to crypto. If no other reason than to find it as a hedge against losing their investments and what they've built their entire lifetime. And imagine that if you have funds in crypto, no matter what country you have to go to, even as a refugee, you still withhold whatever it is that you had in your crypto savings, as opposed to waiting in long lines now to try and get to an ATM in the hopes that you can get money out of a bank that's holding your fiat currency.
Yeah, that's key. There was a tweet. Do we still have that, Fancy? Where this guy was talking about how he made it safely. And I always butcher the name of this country, but he made it safely to Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll upload
Thank
that.
you, Thank you, Fancy. You always save me on that one. Kazakhstan. So he makes it to Kazakhstan, and he has nothing. But he has his private keys, and so he still has his digital assets. And he was talking on Twitter about how it's basically saved his life, and that's the position we're all in right now. I mean, the physical world and the digital world are merging, and in some cases, it's safer to have your assets in the digital world. That's definitely something that it's a major factor now.
Yeah, is this the guy who bought the car with his Bitcoin and was able to get out of Dodge? Because that was another Twitter post amongst the a whole bunch
I
of
didn't
them.
see that one.
Yeah,
I didn't see that one. I saw this one.
So that was also another one where a guy had nothing but his Bitcoin, and he was able to rent a car and purchase it, or buy a used car rather, and then get out of the country. I guess in time for just to get out, just to relocate to a safer place. But it's amazing how I had a lot of conversations in the last week as well with friends and people who knew about crypto but didn't care as much up until even in Canada with Trudeau, there's runs on banks unless you really know what's going on. If people out of fear take their money out of the bank, but they're maybe 2 steps behind from actually understanding what's actually happening. So,
right.
But yeah, it's definitely the move to make and to switch over to crypto.
I mean, I've been saying it for. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I finished it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been saying it for a long time. Like back in 2017 when I was telling all my friends to buy Bitcoin. They were saying, "Oh, the government's going to shut that down. They're never going to let it live." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, they would have to shut down the entire internet for them to kill Bitcoin. And it's as easy as me just walking across the border and being able to access my funds. So I'm not worried about what U.S. regulation or any other country regulation does. And now you're seeing that happen. You're seeing that play out, in real time right now.
Yeah. It's interesting. So you can't even you have to even if you're traveling on an airplane from country to country, you have to, especially out of the US, you have to state whether or not you have more than $10,000 in cash. Yet I can have a thumb drive in my pocket with $1 trillion on it and not have to mention anything.
But they ask you on the app, there's paperwork that asks you if you have crypto on you or
right?
with you. Yeah.
On you. No one has crypto on them.
But the thing is that you don't, no matter how you answer, there's no way that, there you go. If you do have crypto, then you might be one of those individuals who are a potential threat. And then, ultimately, if they took you in the back room to ask you, there's no way they can
hammer or get out of you.
Yeah, confiscate what you have. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years into the future.
Unfortunately for me, my crypto was lost in an unfortunate boating accident. So
right.
Yeah, I don't. And to go back to what you were saying, Jesse, you don't even have to carry the thumb drive now. You can literally, if you put your stuff on a ledger or a treasure, you could pop over to another country, order a new ledger or treasure, and do your 12-word phrase and boom,
Yep.
you're
That's
back
it.
in business.
Hey, I just want to respond here to Monk. I see your comment here. Yeah. You know what? There are some amazing people all throughout Russia that are resisting and showing up and protest at the risk of imprisonment. It's a really it's an honorable thing for the people that are doing that. So yeah, and also with the media blackouts and things that are happening with social media, it's not easy for people within Russia to be completely clear on what's going on when what the rest of the world sees and what they're saying, unless they're actually using a VPN. And so, yeah, it's challenging. And I truly do not believe that what is happening is a reflection of the wishes of the people of Russia. I think it is the government and specifically Putin that is making these choices.
This is an interesting comment by Monty here. In these terrible times, a lot of people have learned exactly what Swift is. I have people talking about it now who are looking at me like I had two heads a month ago. What's interesting, as soon as, turbulent times, we have war going active, going live, all markets crash, right? Right after that, you have sanctions by the US, you have sanctions by the UK. I think maybe Australia as well. You have basically Russian bank accounts being frozen all across the world. And immediately the crypto market starts going back on a rise. Why? Because crypto is unstoppable. So, Russia's been dealing with Bitcoin and such for a long time. You know what I mean? You're not going to shut them down just as easily as turning off their bank accounts. And this is where we're in an interesting kind of juxtaposed moment right now where you have the metaverse and the physical world kind of, I wouldn't want to say fighting for supremacy, but they're both interacting in a unique way, and we're all learning live how to deal with this. And if you're not paying attention right now, good luck.
Absolutely. So yeah, in addition to this news here, so that raises another interesting question, and that is what is next? Because now the Wall Street Journal just had an article where they're talking about, Russian Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies could be part of future sanctions. So now, what does that mean? Can you do that? What does that mean for crypto? Is that, it raises so many questions, because then this could also be used as a reason to put more regulations and more control over cryptocurrency by governments, because that they will jump all over this opportunity. So what do you guys think about this?
So technically, you can't, because Bitcoin's not private. Everybody used to think that Bitcoin is private and that it was secret money, and it's not. You can track Bitcoin. And because of that, technically, you could blacklist Bitcoin that moved through certain accounts. And so you could say, hey, the Bitcoin that moved through these, what we think are Russian accounts is now not accepted by Coinbase or accepted by crypto.com or whatever. So you can't cash out in these types of venues. And that's a possibility. However, this just speaks to the need for greater privacy. And because that's important. Even though, I don't take sides in situations like this because they're far too complex. We have people that are from Russia. We have people that are from Ukraine. They're all hurting. So I don't like to take sides in things like this. But what I do take sides on is when you start dealing with the idea of censorship, and freezing accounts and blocking money moves is a form of censoring somebody and outcasting them from society.
Right. Speaking of which, jumping back to the whole Swift thing, that is so true. There's so many people that have no idea, never even heard of what Swift is. And I can tell you, as someone that left the United States, moved here to the Netherlands, it is a chore moving money between countries, simply because there are checks and balances each step of the way. There truly is. And so with Swift, one of the things that has been announced is that if you look at the language, they're saying that we are going to use Swift to block certain Russian banks. And the largest bank that they named was SVB. I believe that's the second largest bank in Russia. And it's about half of the actual value and volume. Now, the reason that I think they're saying specific banks is because in many ways, if we went straight forward to all banks, that is kind of like, and I actually heard this mentioned in the media here today, about that is kind of a financial nuclear button. Because if we were to go to all banks, it would literally wreck the Russian economy. And so what I believe they're trying to do is to apply pressure, but not go full on just annihilate the financial system. They have to leave some room. Hopefully, in that pressure brings negotiation to the table, because we've seen in the response today, as a result of that, Russia's stepping up their nuclear arms alert. So that's significant. And so that's how big of a boom when you say that, hey, we're going to cut you off from the financial system of the world. That's how big of a move that is. And so I'm curious now to see what preparations and what role Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies play in that aspect as a nation, as one of the biggest powerhouses in the world, gets cut off from the financial system. What is that going to do for crypto? Really curious to see.
Yeah. And you see, and I forgot to mention these articles earlier in the week, but the SEC filing against BlockFi with that $100 million fine, basically setting the tone. You could look at it either positive or negative for more adoption into the space of crypto. But then you also have from Blockworks.com that stablecoin issuers must be banks. So there's a slow encroachment on what we're going to be able to do from what we know how to do it now with stablecoins and decentralized. The decentralized aspect of cryptocurrency is always going to be there. It's just a matter of people coming around and learning about it sooner than later when they feel like there's no other way. But at the end of the day, those 2 points will convene, and there's going to be one clear path to take. Because with Canada, Russia freezing, protesters' funds and the money itself not being of value anymore or backed by anything, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and some of the biggest bag holders out there are like other countries, like the US, because of all their seizures that they've done. There was a huge one recently about that girl who made a load of rap videos. Also like North Korea, who just hold all of their scam money. But
yeah, and to that point, that there's financial authorities can blacklist wallets, and that's what they have been doing. And so it's funny how with Tornado Cash you can reroute, I guess, or I forget the terminology or the lingo, but there's one that you can do that for Bitcoin, and I think I'll have to get my information straight. But other than on the Ethereum network, you can also do that with Bitcoin, and I think that's how they caught that girl who was the rapper on the Odriga X, or the exchange at the time.
That's going to be a movie. It's got to be.
That
insane story.
It definitely will be at one point, but it's just how far are you willing to go to actually make yourself anonymous in the space, because there's avenues that you can take where that's possible. Addresses can be blacklisted and followed, like, as we do with each other when we buy and sell things amongst the community of NFTs. It just depends on how entrenched you are with the knowledge and how much you study to do these types of things.
Yep.
Shout out to Siggy from the chat. Do you think Russia would use crypto to move money? Siggy, I think they already have. I think they've been dealing with crypto for at least a year or two, if not many more. And any other major country out there, you're not going to know when your country first starts dealing with crypto. You're not going to know. You probably won't know for several years. When your country officially adopts crypto, that's when you know that they've been dealing in it for years ahead of time. They're not going to let you know as they first start making their moves into the space. But as Fancy was mentioning, several of the major countries around the world are already holding big bags of crypto for the reasons of them having basically, taken it or stolen it from criminals or whoever they deem were criminals at the time. So you're going to see this happening across the world. I mean, we already have quite a few countries that have already decided that it's legal tender as well. So, it's here.
Yep. This was another interesting twist as it relates to the Internet of Things. We're all familiar with Anonymous to some degree. Well, Anonymous as an organization, as a group, has declared an assault directly on Putin and the Russian government. And yesterday, quite a few of their sites went down, and I believe Kremlin.ru is still down. Most of these are denial of service attacks, but some of them seem to be going a bit further. So curious to see how that unfolds. But again, it's just an interesting time we live in where so much of the playing field happens to be digital. And in this case, there's a cyber war on. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because now there are ways where individuals can be influential, be it groups that are anonymous that are taking part, be it individuals that decide to contribute cryptocurrency to a country to empower them to defend themselves. It's an interesting time that we live in, that this would have been unheard of for citizens to have this kind of power to be influential even a decade or two ago. Any thoughts?
Shout out to Anonymous. I've always been a fan, and I've always been a fan of the Cypherpunks, Anonymous, and all these organizations that are basically, groups of geniuses who are fighting for freedom in the cyber world. Way before any of us knew that the metaverse was coming, they were out there already laying the groundwork.
Yeah, and they're no joke in the sense that they sent out a notice like about a half hour before, and then all of a sudden sites started going down. So like, hey, here's what's coming.
Yeah. Anonymous is gangster as hell.
It takes me back all the way 2012, but even when the housing market happened, the housing market crash in 2008, when Ron Paul, when he was running, I think for his third time, and I was just like getting privy to politics at the time, and I wasn't for anyone or any particular group, but he was talking about abolishing the IRS, and it's just like, wait, isn't that like a cornerstone of how our society runs? And it's just like that breakdown of what you were taught or what you think needs to be reverted. So you got to reverse engineer basically everything you might know. And this is not advice, life or financial, but that's just the path that I went down that led me here, to always be conscious of those opportunities in markets, but just overall in the world when it comes to governments, politics, and money, because they're all intertwined with one another.
One other thing we've got here is, this is another way that this ties into the metaverse, and that is a lot of people may not realize. I actually heard some news that was saying that there's many Americans that couldn't even point out where Ukraine is on a map, and that's unfortunate. It's literally, I think, the largest European country by size, by scale. And there's over 400 game-based organizations in the Ukraine that are providing over 30,000 jobs. Huge IT sector there. Even here in Amsterdam, there's a large population of the IT community that is from Ukraine. I was in Dam Square today, where there was just flooded with people from every direction. And so they play a big role in what is being developed into the metaverse. We've got a lot of developers there, and they play a role for sure.
Across the many dozens and dozens of Discord groups and projects I'm a part of, I guess around half of them had developers or people working on the project, NFT gaming related, that had their situation in Ukraine prevent them from actually continuing work on the project. So there were announcements that were made saying, we'll get back on it shortly. We have to make sure they're safe. We have to get in touch with them. They're relocating. And it just goes to show, like Jess was saying, that this is, it definitely, you feel the effects of this when things like this happen.
Shout out to Monty Burns from the chat. Jesse, these are the same people that think the world speaks American. It's just with different accents. It's funny, Monty, because it's true. I know you're not actually from here, but I grew up here in America, and I know geography around the globe because I've been blessed with the ability to travel around the world, not because I learned it in school. A lot of Americans here, don't necessarily know what's going on, and I always remember that, especially when you start looking at different countries dealing with each other. You have to remember that the masses of people aren't usually as deeply involved in the situation as we would think. It's the people at the top. Famous quote, somebody said that wars are about young men dying for the the pride of old men, you know, and that's usually what you see going on whenever you see a war happening, is you see old men leading the charge over their pride or whatever's going on, and young men dying for it, paying the cost.
You know, and again, I would imagine that there's a lot of folks that have this vision in their mind of Ukraine being this third world country. It is not. Kiev is like one of my favorite cities to visit. I put it on par with Prague, and it's being destroyed right now. We're talking about food scene, culture, arts, their museums, the craft beer scene, the coffee houses. I mean, they are in their own renaissance, or were, and will be again after rebuild. But talk about a resilient people. It's a place definitely that, if for people that like culture and travel, once this country rebuilds, it should definitely be on your radar as a place to check out. All right, what else we've got here? Just a couple more slides before we get into the interview, and I just wanted to drop a few more. This is straight out of news. Gaming community, how the gaming community is showing up and providing support for Ukraine. Destiny 2's Game to Give proceeds go to helping Ukraine. We've got another where Team Liquid is housing esports, left players stranded after Russia's attack on Ukraine. We've got another Ubisoft, even with their being bashed in recent news with their attempt at NFTs launching. They staff quite a few people, and so with their staff, they're providing additional funds, advanced salaries, and temporary housing for the folks that are part of their company. So really, that's, rather than jumping straight into the Wagner interview, and I know that's why a lot of you show up, but I can also see by the comments that you guys are affected the same way that we are, and we want to be in support of what's going on. And it's just one of those things that you can't look past. So appreciate the dialogue that you guys have had with us here, as we kind of reference the things that are relatable to what we talk about weekly, but also that influence and how it interplays with things that are going on within the world and with Ukraine right now. Any final comments, you guys, before we jump into the Wagner interview?
No, that was well put.
So we've got this interview, and we did this on Tuesday to accommodate Michael Wagner's schedule. And it was a good interview, and we approached it from a different perspective, meaning like we wanted to start very high level. We didn't just want to dive in and say what this, what that about Star Atlas, because you also have to remember that as the CEO of this project, his role is separating him in many ways from the day-to-day of, how game design is taking place. And so one of the things that was at least important to me, and I know to some of the others that participated in the interview, was wanting to really understand the foundation for what they're building and what his mindset was and what he thinks about the metaverse, what he thinks about, the industry as a whole, and what were those influences that played a role, and why they decided to create the project that is Star Atlas, and how it's going to unfold and develop along the way. We did get into other questions as it relates specifically to Star Atlas, but I think it's a different kind of interview than what you've seen with the mini interviews that he's done out there. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. And guys, whether it's comments that we see from those of you that are watching along with us, or for any of the hosts here that are the Metaverse Nomads, feel free to jump in at any time if you want us to pause and have any dialogue about it. Episode number 30, Metaverse Nomads podcast, where we talk about projects that are laying the foundation for the metaverse. And with me today are my co-hosts, and joining us is a very special guest. And for those of you who join us regularly, you know that we're not only big fans of Star Atlas, it's also the primary focus of our gaming guild, Rome. So therefore, Star Atlas needs no introduction, nor does the Star Atlas CEO and fearless leader, Michael Wagner. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
In the past, you've been incredibly generous with your time. In fact, a quick search of YouTube, anyone can find dozens and dozens of your past interviews. And since our audience already knows you really well, it makes it easy for us to skip right past what is Star Atlas and, about your background, and just jump right into some of the burning questions on our minds. But also, I wanted to kind of start at a very high level. But before we do that, how are you guys? We've got Banjo here with us, and we've got Ray, and we've got Fancy. You guys doing good today?
Yep, I'm doing all right. It's a pleasure to have you here, Wagner, and thank you for all of you who are watching. We hope you enjoy.
Same here. Doing well. Wagner, glad to have you here. One of my gripes on the town hall is talking about how much we love the team, but I think this is a safer environment to say how much we love the team. So really appreciate having you on today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, obviously we're very fond of the talent that we've been able to recruit over time. And I think, just given the immense interest from not only the community, but talent pools all over the world in joining Star Atlas, where, it's really going to enable us to deliver on this vision, this very ambitious vision that we've outlined. So great to be here with you guys. Rome, big supporter of yours as well. You guys have been around with us in Discord and participating in town halls and communicating with us now for quite a while. So thank you guys for all your support of Star Atlas as well.
I think a good place to start is from a high level and just really talking about the metaverse and what were some of the inspirations for your vision for really wanting to bring Star Atlas to life. When you're talking to your friends and family, or just someone that isn't so tech savvy, how do you describe what the metaverse is and what you're building with Star Atlas?
Yeah, I mean, this question is one that's been coming up more and more, because the metaverse itself, the concept, ideation of the metaverse is still in its formative stages. So there's, I've said this in the past, but there's no real clear-cut definition of what the metaverse actually will represent going into the future. I like to present it as, quite simply, an alternative digital economy that is open for participation from anyone around the world. So that's kind of thinking of the foundation of any society. The economy is a critical component and cornerstone of that. And so that's kind of what we're doing here at Star Atlas, is building a digital economy that's, based initially on gameplay as the primary attraction and application that will bring people into our metaverse or our section of whatever the broader metaverse will become. And focusing in the future on the other aspects of metaverse development. So things like social interactions, education, workplace, commerce, shopping, all of these various independent sectors of the global workforce today will be disrupted in some way and represented in the metaverse. That's my opinion. I also think of it largely as the next generation of the internet. So essentially everything that is possible on the internet today is going to be possible and executable inside the metaverse of the future, just in a more immersive digital environment.
A bit of an add-on question to that is, if you had the endless resources to build out the metaverse as you envision it, what does it look like, 5, 10, 20 years out, if you were able to do it any way that you wanted it?
I don't want to sound arrogant in this response, but we've demonstrated enormous success over the past year. So that's not to say that we have endless resources today, but we actually have more resources than we're able to deploy presently. And, so we're walking through the structure and strategy of how to maximize the utilization of our own treasury assets. But, to be honest with you, I don't think we would change the roadmap or the vision in any capacity from what we've outlined currently. We're developing out on as aggressive of a timeline as we possibly can right now. So maybe just to lay out that roadmap again a little bit, we are focused primarily on building out this AAA gaming experience first and foremost. Going back kind of to the previous question of, what is the metaverse? I think of that as the platform. And then there are going to be a variety of applications. That could be work, that could be education, or in our case, our spearhead into this is a gaming application that's highly enjoyable, entertaining, engaging. It should be gameplay that people would want to participate in and engage in, with or without the financial incentive structure and mechanisms that we're building that are only possible through, things like NFTs and crypto native assets and the operation of the DAO. So in our roadmap and our vision, it's essentially spending the first years developing out that foundation and building those structures, but also focusing largely on gameplay. I think what is really critical about developing out a successful both economy and metaverse is the accrual or attraction of users, particularly in the short term. This is kind of a land grab, right? I mean, there's how many metaverse is now everywhere. You hear it everywhere. Major technology companies are looking to develop out their own ecosystems and their own environments. look, the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. There's an underlying strategy there to move into digital environment development and metaverse. So without question, Facebook rebranding itself, its holding company, to Meta. I think that really demonstrates and solidifies in my mind the potential of this like future world that's being built right now. But as a component of the land grab is, what is the attraction? How do you get people into your world, into your universe as a starting point? And so we're doing that with gaming. The future though for Star Atlas is to focus on building out tool sets, so APIs and software development kits, SDKs, that are going to enable a future of entrepreneurs to create their own experiences, user-generated content that will live inside and around Star Atlas universe itself. Being able to enable and empower the world to create within your ecosystem is going to lead to exponential explosive growth and development, which is very synergistic with the existing users as well as new users. There's economic incentives in place to build in this world because the users are there. More users will join because now there's more experiences that other people externally are developing, and it eliminates the responsibility and the burden on us as a development studio to create everything, right? And we're essentially sharing in the economic upside, the distribution of value throughout this economy with everybody who's creating within it. And we're building the structures today that provide those incentive structures. Yeah, I mean, more to the point, I don't think we'd really change anything about our roadmap. We see gaming as being able to bring in the users. That's going to attract the builders because now they have an audience to sell their products to. And it continuously compounds going into the future. And it's so hard to say, what this timeline actually looks like. But I can tell you honestly, we're thinking on 20 to 50 year timelines, not 2 to 3 year timelines.
Is there a greater bottleneck with technology or with the deployment of manpower to actually roll out what your vision is?
Yeah, I mean, on the technology front, we're blazing trails here, right? Like we're working with alpha software, beta software in virtually every component of the application that we're developing. And even conceptually or philosophically, the idea of, say, the DAO, there's no clear framework or playbook to create a product around or to create a governance structure around. And in so many ways, the governance structures that exist societally today are the ones that we're trying to disrupt. We don't even want to model our own DAO off of, say, any sovereign state or country's government structure. We want to create a new, more inclusive system. That in and of itself is a massive undertaking, right? And will require a lot of feedback and communication with the community, with the public itself in developing this out. Now, we certainly have ideas of how we think the best initial implementation would look. And some of those are structured so that we can ensure that we maintain our, say, control over that structure in the immediate term so that we can continue to build out our vision. I talk about this a lot. We need to maintain control of the DAO for the first really 5 to 7 years. We want to bring this product to market. We want to lay the foundation. Now, that doesn't mean that the DAO itself won't have various proposals introduced that we abstain from that are still impactful to the community and impactful to the game. That's all going to be possible. But what we don't want is to relinquish control before we're able to build the foundation of something that we think can be revolutionary. So technology is tough. Solana has encountered its own challenges over the year. Those are challenges due to success, though. I mean, whenever somebody asks me, are you still bullish Solana? The network's gone down. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the network that's growing faster than any other. It's a victim of its own success in that when you have more people innovating and building applications and actually using the technology, sure, you're going to stress test it. I have absolute confidence that the team is going to resolve those issues, and we see how quickly patches come out to introduce those fixes. But Solana, using Serum's beta, we're even working in early access version of Unreal Engine 5. It's not even fully released yet, right? So there's a lot of things that are unknowns for us, a lot of unknown variables that we have to work through, and we're totally comfortable navigating that space. But it does mean that it takes a little more time, right? Because we're doing R&D, we're doing testing. Not everything works. We have to go back to the table, scrap something, and start over and rebuild. So that's part of the challenge. On the employment front, again, I think a very encouraging metric for us that I often share in the town halls is just how quickly we're attracting new talent And the figure from the previous town hall was that we added 13 employees over 11 days, the first 11 days of February. We hire on average almost one person per day. I think it's very promising from our recruiting standpoint that we'll more than double the team over the course of this year. And in 2 years, I could see us being 1,200 to 1,500 people strong internally. And I'll just kind of close with, in terms of the previous question about unlimited resources, we are well capitalized. We've experienced a lot of sales, but what is important for the community to understand is that none of that's going in our pockets, and we don't intend to slow revenue, by the way, because we're competing with the likes of Microsoft, we're competing with the likes of Meta, who wants to spend $10 billion per year in building out their metaverse. Well,
right.
Yes, we've done phenomenal in our first year, but we know that the capital resources necessary to execute on this are substantial, considerably larger than what we have today. So we don't intend to slow down revenue, but every dollar is going right back into increasing the team size, motivating the team, providing a great internal incentive structure for that talent, so they can bring their innovative ideas to the table and provide them with an environment where they can feel free to operate and use their sophistication to bring innovative products and tooling to Star Atlas itself.
Well said.
Back before we as a gaming guild, Rome, before we were exposed to Star Atlas, we had already been a guild formed focusing on other games and other that are in development. And I remember one of the first interviews I saw with you, and the thing that drew me in, and I think probably the same for many of the rest of us here, is how open you were in communicating what you were doing and what you had planned. And you addressed some of the things that a lot of other companies were shying away from. We had lots of conflict in other communities simply for asking them what the utility of their NFTs were. So that was refreshing. And also the other thing that made sense to me is that you're approaching it from the background in education and finance. Mm-hmm. So when I look at some of the other projects out there, it seems that there's a heavy focus on the gameplay and a lot of the dreaming of what games can be without really establishing a foundation that can be long lasting economically. My question for you is, how much of your background in finance and your education, how much of that has influenced the way that you are looking to create this semi-virtual economy? And I'm calling it semi-virtual because there's aspects of it that make it a real economy.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's been incredibly beneficial, I would say, to the, things like token economic design and kind of internal economic design. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not an economist by trade, right? It is a traditional finance background. It's working in capital markets. It's understanding various financial instruments and how they work and how to create intrinsic value. That is quite literally what I would do every day when I was working in portfolio management, is look at a variety of financial models, and based on those models, create or determine the intrinsic value of an asset, the fair price of something. Right now, that is one of the most complicated things for humans to interpret, just to be perfectly honest. And this is in any category, right? It's one thing when we're like going to the store and shopping, but think about any form of negotiation that you encounter with another person. And this could even be deciding where to go to a restaurant. Right. That's some form of negotiation, right? Understanding and identifying what is a fair value for any form of exchange is incredibly complex internal computation that we all have to do, and it's very difficult. So bringing that into the way that we're structuring the economy is certainly helpful. With that said, though, I want to give a lot of credit to the co-founding team, because I'm extremely grateful that we've been able to bring this group of people together. And it was, call it serendipity or what have you. But, I've worked with Jacob and Danny now for going on 5 years, I want to say. They got involved with me when we were building Tokes, which was the crypto and cannabis platform, which, by the way, we are in the process of re-envisioning right now and bringing something to market on that I think the community at large is going to be pretty excited about. Just a little teaser, but having met them through that process and built and established one company within there and figuring out that we work well together was great. Pablo is somebody that I met in 2018 as an indirect result of what we were doing at Tokes again, because he was also involved in the cannabis industry and maintaining that relationship over the years. But when you bring all four of us together, we have this extremely complementary skill set. You guys know quite well. Danny is the visionary behind the gaming product itself. Yeah. The entertainment value, the gameplay mechanics, the gameplay pillars, the thing that people really want to get engaged with. That's Danny's vision there. And he's bringing an amazingly beautiful product to market. right? And so I get to support him in realizing that vision. And likewise, Jacob on the technology side and managing this now, I want to say 30 to 40 member engineering team that's focused on everything from web dev to infrastructure to blockchain development and game design and development as well. Like, that's complex. And Pablo, he's Chief Revenue Officer. I mean, he's looking at all different types of strategic partnerships, business development, marketing, communications, press releases, managing all of these things that actually bring what we're building out to the community and out to the public. So the four of us combined, it's like Captain Planet. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm so grateful. Like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all four of us. We wouldn't be where we are today. Yeah. And then, of course, on the back of that is all of the talent that we've recruited, really from the earliest days, that just these people treat their work as largely as if they were the entrepreneur themselves. They're bringing their own innovation and vision to the product, and we welcome that type of dialogue internally so that people don't feel concerned about expressing whether they have a concern or they think that they can contribute in some way through an idea. We cultivate and foster that. That's important to us, this idea of innovation internally. By no means do we feel like we've got the right answers for everything, because all of this is very experimental.
The inner workings and the culture of Star Atlas, it definitely shows in the Discord and in the community and from the mods. It tells a lot about a team. And then my other point that I wrote down here was that everyone gives advice on things they didn't do yet. So when it comes to the economics of games and the tokenomics, I'm just glad that your background in finances here shine through and influence a lot of what we read in these papers compared to, again, other projects. And there's a plethora of other projects. We're not just thinking of one whenever we say that, because there's a huge conversation around how projects are just being invested in to then sell and flip those assets. So the people who get these assets earlier on, then they leave, and it's a negative effect, net positive. It's not something that actually helps in the long term. Sound projects, great vision, but the economics of it all, if we're going to be living in the realm of NFT gaming, needs to be as sound as the gameplay, if it's fun.
Definitely agree with you. Yeah, and I appreciate those comments.
If I could tag on to that, well, first, I just want to say, considering your backgrounds, I'm sure your in-person ideation sessions are fantastic. But the question I have for you, and it's something that we've seen in another IP, is sometimes the visionary, the game creator, the person who has all the ideas, the fun gets in the way, right? Or I shouldn't say fun gets in the way, their vision gets in the way of fun. So how are you working internally to make sure that the game is not only matching the vision of what you want it to be, but it's going to be fun down the line?
There was a question early on about the kind of the genesis of the idea, and in so many ways we're building a Star Atlas as a passion project. You guys know about my background with the LAN parties and that group, the Lanarchists, right? Mm-hmm. Danny and Jacob, long time. We've been gamers, lifelong gamers, right? So we're building the product and the game that we actually want to play, and space exploration inspires the imagination. There's you guys know we've worked with Jason Silva. He was on some of the Rebirth posters, and he has this quote from, I believe it's Marina Benjamin. It says, "When we dream of space, we dream of transcendence, and we dream of what we might become." And this idea of space exploration and just general exploration is so attractive to humanity. It's the reason why we've populated the globe, and all of us would love to be able to go navigate the stars, but physically we're not capable of doing so. Although now we have, many very successful technology entrepreneurs, billionaires that are launching their own spaceships now. And that's the next generation of humanity, is to actually go, populate the celestial bodies of the universe. But we get to bring that to the world in digital space today, and we don't have to wait for the next 500 years for that to really be possible. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of gameplay, it's just a lot of discussion across our game design team and Danny's creative team, and we've gone through, even just since the start of the year, I think we communicated that over the first 3 weeks is really just exclusively planning and goal setting for the year. Last year, by the way, was, absolute whirlwind. We were nonstop going right into the end of the year, and I'm glad that we were able to get Score out. Score is not the most exciting gameplay. We fully appreciate that. But what we were able to accomplish was provide that true intrinsic utility for the ship NFTs that people have been purchasing. That was the most important thing. We want this exchange in value, right? So we're going to release iteratively. We want to give you some value. Now that value might be more entertainment oriented going into the future and less about the financial incentives. We're not trying to build a DeFi platform here. That's not what it's all about. That's the enhancement. The gameplay is what we're focused on. So, but yeah, there's a lot of ideation and brainstorming sessions about what are the next mechanics that we want to introduce. And also, how does that impact, again, the economy, the foundation of really this environment that we're building? How does the release schedule impact the economy, impact the value to the users, lead to greater user retention and also user growth over time? I mean, there's so many variables that we're trying to manage. We don't have the luxury of just sitting back and trying to perfect everything before it comes out. We've got to keep moving and releasing because of the way that we came to the market. So it's a unique place to be in. There's a lot, it's kind of like operating on quicksand in many ways, but we have a lot of great minds that are also gamers that we know what we like to play. We know what we've had fun doing in the past, and we believe that we know what the community would want to engage in. So we try to bring that to market with the economy as the foundation in mind.
Just a couple more questions that are kind of outside of the Star Atlas ecosystem, kind of looking at the metaverse as a whole. And one of those is that you've mentioned Facebook, and we know that there's a lot of other big tech plays that are right now leveraging the buzzword of the metaverse. What do you think they're creating? What do you see being developed there, and how does that differ from what projects like Star Atlas are creating?
Yeah, there's, I would say, like 3 different kind of categories of platforms being developed. This is partially metaverse, but also partially gaming, and it's closed permission systems, which is the historical path for a game developer, right? Like, you don't actually own anything. You are agreeing to terms of service to be able to actively engage in whatever product it is that they brought, whether it's an MMO or a first-person shooter, or, you know, say in the case of Meta, these are closed source systems that are permissioned in order to access. And then there's open permission systems, which is kind of the middle ground, where it's still based on centralized service provider, kind of your Web 2 legacy service provider, but there's greater accessibility to build on top of that. I would say Facebook or Meta is kind of in this realm of open permissioned, because they are looking to also build tools that brings in creators, content creators and entrepreneurs. And then there's where we're at, which is open permissionless systems. I don't want to sound disingenuous with that, because there is definitely a closed component of where we're at today with Star Atlas as we continue to build this idea out. The idea in the future is that everything is effectively decentralized, permissionless, and censorship resistant. So true to the ethos of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I don't necessarily want to compare us to Bitcoin, but it's analogous in the sense that once you're able to fully decentralize a network and have inclusive participation, it's effectively impossible to stop. The thing that government could impose on Bitcoin is to say it's illegal to trade. Now, that would be catastrophic to something like the price, right? So if you're a market speculator on Bitcoin, then the last thing you want to see are these restrictions at the government level on the trading of that digital asset. However, the technology is unstoppable, because the nodes operate all over the world, right? People get to participate in the actual infrastructure operation of that network. The ledger will continue to exist, and people will continue to trade Bitcoin for a variety of things, whether or not it ever were to become illegal. Just a quick kind of tangent here, or a caveat, is that Bitcoin, in my opinion, is definitely unstoppable at this point, simply because it has attracted far too much institutional interest. There's too many people with lobbying power out there that now hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and it's essentially too established into the mainstream that it would be globally catastrophic for governments to try to make Bitcoin illegal. So that's my personal opinion. Our idea, though, is to get Star Atlas to kind of the same level. So yeah, we're going to have back-end centralized servers that are operating game content initially. But think about the way that we're building logic today, even the way Score operates. When you're refueling a ship, by the way, you know, that is an action that gets recorded on chain. Mm-hmm. I would also draw a differentiation here between this idea of blockchain gaming, because what we're getting is a lot of pseudo blockchain games. I'll also break this down into kind of three categories. You have traditional game developers building in either, say, Unity or Unreal Engine or some other game development engine. They're bringing all of those features just as they would as if it was a regular game, and then they're introducing, say, NFTs as an asset class within the game. That's kind of the easiest implementation. People are claiming that that is a blockchain game. In some capacities it is, but again, I think that's a little bit disingenuous. The next extension is to introduce, say, crypto native assets as a component, a central component to the underlying economy. That's another nice step forward, but not necessarily fully inclusive of being what we consider to be a blockchain game, which is actually building the logic to live on chain. So you have functionality that lives in the game engine, but you also have functionality that lives on chain. This is having that functionality live on chain means that it becomes open and accessible to third-party developers, right? We can't restrict access to that. If we have a mechanic that's operating on chain and somebody wants to build a tool externally to interact with that, I'll use the example of, say, the auto REIT supply tool that came out. I don't know if you guys saw this. It came to my attention. I didn't know about it until late last week or early this week, but somebody built a tool that will resupply their ships for them with the different resources. Okay. I mean, do we want to prohibit that type of innovation? Not necessarily. I don't see that as game breaking. We do want to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the game itself. But I actually think that's kind of cool that somebody undertook the effort to build a tool that interacts with our on-chain logic to refuel ships. That's great. That's kind of the most complicated, most complex way of developing out a blockchain game. But it also means that regardless of the environment that you interact with, whether it's a mobile application we release in the future, if it's in the web client through the mini game, or if it's an Unreal Engine, all of the actions or many of the actions of the players are going to be synchronized across those. Place a building in the web client and you'll see it pop up in Unreal Engine, because these are, again, functions of blockchain. And we're actually building out the SDK right now that is the crypto integration into Unreal Engine that doesn't exist. It's another tool that has to be created. It doesn't exist, right? We're building that.
So you mentioned centralization of some assets. How does that look in the future? How do you decentralize the stuff that you have to centralize now from a storage capacity, maybe an asset capacity? Can you share with us what your plans are?
Are you referring to asset creation, or maybe can you elaborate on the question?
Well, I'm assuming there's some level of backend that's being run on a centralized process, right? So, and if the goal is to decentralize all of that, do you see a node system for people who play the game? Do you have an idea of people just running nodes to help support the ecosystem?
It's a great question. And that is absolutely where we would envision it going. I mean, in some capacities, you can participate in Star Atlas decentralization by, say, being a node operator on Solana, right? If you're a validator on Solana, you're kind of supporting that network, which inherently supports our network. The bigger question outstanding in my mind is, would we ever reach a stage where we can actually have game servers that are fully decentralized through some network architecture? That's the Web3 that we all want to participate in. Decentralized storage, decentralized web, decentralized finance, all of these things are kind of the future of the internet. Now, again, what we have to be concerned about is the integrity of the game itself. Is somebody able to compromise or manipulate some element of gameplay if they're operating a node themselves, and say they're creating some competitive advantage, essentially cheating by operating that node? So this is all very future discovery related R&D, but that's the bigger vision, is like turning everything over, allowing everybody to participate in the architecture. And maybe you're not playing the game and earning from playing the game, but you're operating a node, and so you're actually earning off of the node. That's a fully inclusive economy. So that, yes, it's a great question. That is where we'd like to take it. Whether or not we're going to be able to achieve that in our lifetimes is something that's still an outstanding question for me.
So there's another question that I've had, and we're starting to see more and more of these companies pop up, companies that want to be the Steam of blockchain gaming. And you've kind of outlined some of the different facets of what people consider blockchain gaming. So if you think about a company that wants to do that, and we'll stay away from the names of who they are, what do you think those companies need to offer the developers to create a successful ecosystem?
I do think that the tooling is going to be important, but to be frank, I believe that we could reduce this down to, do they have the users presently? This is where, again, I think that Star Atlas is going to have a considerable advantage, because we're going to have the game that brings in the users that will be able to be exposed to new experiential opportunities that are created by third-party developers. If you're already flying around in Star Atlas, And then you look at when you're loading up the game client, getting into Star Atlas, you see this list of games that have been created by external developers that are immediately accessible through kind of the Miniverse model. Well, we already have the traffic. If you have the traffic, you have the users, then you have the reason to encourage new developers to build on top of your platform. So yes, it's important to create tools like this Foundation SDK, which is what I was referring to when I said we're building the crypto integration into Unreal Engine. That's a like wallet management, inventory management, asset management support structure. Plus, I don't want to reveal too much on it right now, but this extensible tool set that we're using internally so that we can build this integration, but we turn that over and now you're a traditional or legacy AAA studio that knows nothing about cryptocurrency. Well, you just take our plugin, right? You just take our plugin and you start building on it. And now you don't have to develop all of that. So that's one resource. But again, the users, if we already have 100 million or billion people in Star Atlas, more people are going to want to build with us and on our platform than with anyone else who's trying to bootstrap a Steam-like publishing client from the start.
You guys are putting a lot of time and money into the development of all this. You're running across the barriers, you're seeing the roadblocks, and you're creating solutions for them. Do you anticipate a day where the Star Atlas dev team licenses out their technology to other developers? Or is the idea to draw them all into using SDKs and APIs and stuff like that to draw them all into Star Atlas?
There's a possibility for licensing. We're kind of still thinking through some of the commercial strategies on that. I feel really good about the revenue streams that we already have as a company. And so the cost benefit analysis that we'd be undertaking is, does it make more sense for us to create a cost barrier for a developer to create within Star Atlas, charging them for access to the tech that we've developed? Or do we benefit greater by simply providing that to anyone who wants to build on Star Atlas? And yes, we don't capture any immediate economic value, but what we do capture is the value of a larger GDP and user base across the entire universe of Star Atlas. More games, more activities, more experiences mean more users, which intrinsically increases GDP. And as you guys know, or I think the way we structured the DAO itself is to capture a portion of the total GDP generated across the economy. That's how it's functioning today with Score, is all of the Atlas being spent to purchase resources is actually being channeled directly into the DAO. And at some point, the DAO has the ability to utilize those resources for various, pretty pivotal decision-making, which is not necessarily just passing those resources back out to the holders, the governors of the DAO, but actually utilizing them, maybe to run a community growth campaign, maybe to fund an external developer, maybe to pay Star Atlas, maybe to pay us or a subsidiary team of ours to build a specific feature that the community wants to see. We already have the structure wherein there's financial resources in a treasury to make impactful decisions across the ecosystem, and that's what the DAO is. That's how it operates, right? So the whole point, though, is to continuously build transaction volume, to build GDP, and it's why I often refer to what we're building as kind of nation state, like sovereign state. We effectively operate as this independent country without borders that anybody can participate in, and the way that countries manage their success across their economy is purely through GDP. How much economic value is exchanged across the entire country. And so we're thinking in same terms.
So we're going to narrow down back into the NFT gaming space for a second. What are your thoughts on the overall NFT gaming space? And are there any concerns that you see in the space at the moment, or when you first got involved heavily? And then is there any innovations on the radar that stand out, whether you noticed them or were brought to you by a team? Is there anyone on the team that are scouting out for any other innovations in the space that Star Atlas could possibly benefit from?
It's a great question. I kind of have to defer it for now, to be honest with you, only because I've been so immersed in Star Atlas now for so long that I'm not really able to keep pace of what's going on. There is so much innovation taking place across the entire crypto ecosystem. It's hard for me to stay up to date. But I will say we did just bring on a GameFi analyst, and we are looking at increasing the analyst positions throughout the company so we can monitor things like innovation across DeFi and blockchain gaming and look for those best opportunities that we can integrate or introduce into Star Atlas. We get contacted daily from people that are looking for some form of strategic partnership, integration, announcement, collaboration, etc. Once going back to my earlier point about, determining the value of, say, a relationship, that is a very complicated equation. And in many cases, we understand that right now, because of the, call it success, kind of, I almost hate to say enormity of Star Atlas, but how quickly we've exploded into the scene, we understand that we bring a lot of value to anyone that we partner with. But at the same time, we want to ensure that there's a true long-term sustainable relationship with anyone that we engage with, because it dilutes us every time we say we're partnering with someone else if it's not genuine. So part of the new team that we're building out on the growth side within Pablo's department of revenue ops is looking at all of these strategic partnerships, but also the innovation that's taking place, analyzing those as opportunities, and then looking for ways that we can build upon Star Atlas with that information. And so I'm looking forward to the day where I can get let's call it the weekly debrief of, hey, these are the 5 hottest projects. This is what they're doing. This is what they're doing different from us. And this is how we believe we can improve what we're doing at Star Atlas. So that's all coming. That'll happen this year, but it's a new department that we're currently recruiting for.
Beautiful.
That's a great lead into the next question here. And that is, now with the team growing at such a fast pace, how involved are you in the actual design of the game at this point? Or are you having to kind of move out into tasks specific to being the CEO?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's, I think, one of those transitions that successful companies and CEOs have to experience at some point. Yes, I've launched companies in the past. Nothing's ever reached the level of success that we have at Star Atlas. And so my day-to-day is certainly changing quite a bit. It's somewhat disheartening because I love being really deeply involved and also understanding the nuance of every conversation. But just given the scale of the company at this stage, I can't be as involved and as intimate as I was previously. So what I'm still trying to navigate personally is how do I capture the most important pieces of information so that I can communicate effectively with the community, with people like you, right? On phone calls like this. If you're going to ask specific questions, I need to make sure I can at least hit the highlights of what it is that we're doing. So I am involved on a lot of those calls internally, not so much with the actual structuring, but more of a presentation of what was decided. And then if there's any necessity to alter anything, then, then I contribute my thoughts there. Where I'm still more involved, but will likely over the course of this year be less engaged, is on the economic design. Still looking at building out our team on that side. And it has proven challenging to identify specific people that fit the mold. What I'll put out here is that we structure the economic department as really a chief economist, which is different from traditional studios that would hire a chief game economist, because they're thinking more in terms of those closed permissioned economies. We're thinking again in terms of nation state like operations. So we're still looking to hire that chief economist role. But then there's the head of game economy, the head of token economy, which is like open Web3 type integrations and better understanding of what's going on in the crypto ecosystem. And then a head of monetization, which just looks at ways, again, that we can commercialize the product, but also thinking in terms of value exchange with all of the users. And then analysts and data scientists all beneath those.
It's a lot. I mean, do you guys feel like you guys are doing all of the pioneering, or do you feel like there's even any projects, anything out there that you can lean on and look to and say, okay, there's a model? Or is this pretty much from the ground up, you guys, we got to build it?
I might not be speaking for the entire team. Again, with all of the communication that's going on, people are posting examples of things like governance frameworks, DAO frameworks that other people are introducing. One of those frameworks that we're exploring right now is Tribeca, which is deployed by Saber on Solana. So, certainly we're not creating all of the innovation throughout the space. We need to rely on the minds of the global population in building out what we're building. And again, to me, it's one of the greatest advantages of building in this open Web3 world is we get to pull from all of the creativity that exists out there. All of the DeFi protocols that are being centered on within Solana right now, at some point will be integrated in some way into Star Atlas, whether it's just as a third-party service that people can locate themselves and go, deploy the resources, like Tulip Garden, for example, being able to lend out your Atlas and Polis. Awesome, right? We don't have that directly integrated into our front end, but people know it exists, and that's an advantage to our users. That's a benefit to our users. So all of these things we get to pull from. So with that said, we see ourselves as kind of a North Star in the space, and we also take a lot of responsibility, we believe, in stewarding this appropriately going into the future, because we are probably a beacon for many other teams that are looking to build.
When it comes to gameplay itself, we see around the industry, we see a lot of different approaches, but most of them seem to have some really large assets that they will use in sale of the game. Now, the assumption is from the outside looking in is that is one of the models used to raise capital to be able to do the things that as a game developer you need to do. Is there something underlying that leans towards creating a level playing field for anyone to have the hero's journey in a game? Or is it designed from the very start to be a kingmaker, meaning like, here's a big asset, and from immediately day one, this group or this individual is going to be a really big influencer within the game? Is there any thought or leaning to one way or the other, or are both of these things considered?
Yeah, I would liken king making to kind of pay to win, which is certainly what we want to avoid. I mean, definitely our objective here is to create balance throughout the game, such that people are able to pool resources competitively to be able to participate in all end game activities. Obviously, you guys have a great guild. You have many members. It's one of the areas that we think is going to create a lot of value for the individual player is participating collectively with other individuals in the execution across the game. There's so many deep layers of complexity in the way that we structure like career paths and progression, that we believe that there will be opportunity for everybody. Certainly somebody who has a Titan or commander ship is going to be able to defeat somebody who has a small or extra small ship. But if you're able to combine resources, then a Titan should not be invincible. I guess let me just put it that way, right? And also we want to encourage this community group participation across even things like factions. So sure, you have your DAC, and you guys have your own internal strategy of how to operate, maybe maximize resources and efficiency of productivity yourselves. But that doesn't mean that you guys are going to even be able to complete everything yourselves. You and your faction will need to combine resources on some mega structures, and maybe the only way another Titan is created is through a faction level group participatory vote through that internal DAO infrastructure, right? So the faction DAO can determine if and when another Titan class ship gets introduced. So what we do want to create is a system wherein people are able to continuously grow, both financially and progressively in leveling of their character, strength of their character and attributes. But what I believe is that we can create this system wherein you're, through the in-game earnings, you're kind of reinvesting that back into yourself and continuously improving upon the ship class and character class and land class that you're operating. So you can grow, right? We don't want to restrict anybody to a particular style of operations. We want you to be able to grow and progress personally through the game. And we think that doing so with guild members will make you more effective at that, but it doesn't mean that that's a requirement.
Makes sense. With the Titan ships themselves, one of the things that's come up on our show a lot that we've had questions about is why so early in gameplay? It almost feels like either this end game thing that you should be aiming for, or perhaps something that you build up to as a faction rather than just right out the gate. Here's God mode. That's kind of, it kind of seems that way. So I'm just curious what the thoughts were behind it. And I'll add to this. One of the suggestions that someone came up with on the show is that why wouldn't the auction be for perhaps blueprints to be able to build your Titan? That way there was still some runway before all of a sudden you had this dominant player, this dominant force in the game.
I don't think we're necessarily fully decided on path of execution for the Titans. We've outlined what a release schedule would look like this year, which is inclusive of all of our ships, by the way, not just of the Titans. I guess what I want to clarify is it's not necessarily about revenue for us. We do see these as being very high dollar value items. We think they'll sell for a lot in auction. And there is a publicity component there that's incredibly beneficial to the entire ecosystem. When you see, Forbes picking up or Bloomberg picking up articles or drafting articles about, sales greater than 1 million or 500,000 or, whatever the case may be, this is a lot of exposure for us as an entity. And so we see considerable earned media value in being able to do that. That earned media being something we didn't have to pay for or necessarily contribute to. It's the media picking us up because what we're doing is impresses them in some capacity. And so that's not exclusively beneficial to us as a team, by the way. Again, we think about the growth of the ecosystem, the growth of the economy being denominated in growth in the user base. The more users, the more value exchanged. That benefits the DAO. It means more people are interested in assets. So it's kind of a marketing strategy in many ways. Just to be frank, it's a way for us to, we believe, get great exposure to the global population through a successful auction process. Those assets are, again, though, not intended to be God mode by any means. They can be destroyed. They will be destroyed. And a ship like a Titan being destroyed is also probably going to make headlines somewhere.
That'll make news.
Same in Eve, right? When like millions of dollars of Eve assets are destroyed. Well, now there's real financial consequences, though, because we're doing this on chain. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And you had mentioned community-based, development towards different structures. And I think we've heard in the past Dyson Sphere, we've heard, Titans. Is there any other large community projects that you anticipate coming into the game?
I can't speak to anything else right now, to be honest with you. But again, these would be collectively managed and collective resource requirements to be able to develop out these mega projects. But largely it's going to be based on things like, do you have a construction facility capable of building out ships on the scale of Titans, right? Like a shipyard module that can actually develop a Titan before a faction can, even if they have the blueprint, before they can even develop out a Titan or build one, they're going to need the shipyard facility that's capable of constructing it. And so something like that might be a faction-wide activity or project.
Good to hear.
Speaking of newsworthy events, potentially another newsworthy event for Star Atlas this year could be land sales, if that actually takes place. This is an article that was talking about how last year, which I think these numbers actually look a little light, we're about a half a billion in metaverse real estate. The expectation of $1 billion this year. Well, with having Star Atlas having recently done over 200 million in chip sales, if there was even something similar to that in land sales, that would be nearly a quarter of that projection for all metaverse real estate. Do you anticipate large numbers similar to ship sales, and will we even know anytime soon, like how many land plots there will actually be available for land? For example, with the existing base of users now, if every single person wanted to get a piece of land, will there be enough land for that to happen? Or is there going to be scarcity of land and it's going to be, not necessarily a free for all, but what can you tell us about land?
Just on the question of quantity of users, we have something like 91,000 fleets actively enlisted in Score right now. That's not necessarily indicative of daily active users, by the way, because it's quite possible for one person to be enlisted through multiple wallets, or it's possible for multiple wallets to be essentially aggregated, or multiple users to be aggregated into a single wallet and pooled today, just for simplicity of management. But
so when you say fleets, like for example, when I launch ships. Now, would my wallet be considered a fleet, or all of the different ships that I launch are those individual fleets?
Your wallet in aggregate. So even though you're enlisting individual ship types, it's all aggregated into a single fleet, which is recognized based on your wallet being registered to a particular faction. So about 91,000 wallets have selected factions to date, which we think is pretty impressive, just considering we've got fairly limited gameplay functionality right now. In terms of land, we've talked a little bit about some of the restructuring of the roadmap that we've undertaken. I think on the last couple of town halls, we talked about that. We did anticipate having land development and production being the next major feature release this year, but we've actually since reprioritized an enhanced version of ship missions or ship exploration, focusing more on ship assets again, especially given, that's the primary NFT asset that's available on the market to date. We have more ships coming online, as you all know, throughout the course of this year. So land was deprioritized. Little alpha for everyone out there is that the new ship mission module is going to lead to some land-based resources that will be able to be utilized. What we aren't going to be doing for land sales is pre-selling prior to ability to utilize that asset. So whereas with ships, ships were being sold in the Galactic Asset offering before we had any gameplay functionality. We actually thought gameplay would come a little bit sooner than it did. It just took us a bit longer to get that feature out. We are going to strategically withhold land until we know that we have the actual functionality in a gameplay loop that would be near immediately released after the release of land. So can't give you any additional information on quantity of parcels or pricing of parcels. We do have some rough figures for that, but by the time we get there, all of that's likely to change. I would say, at least with the smallest land parcels, though, very similar to extra small ships, is we want those to be in ample supply so that everybody can at least get access to that gameplay loop should they want to.
With regards to land, the way that we've theory crafted about it in the past is we know we've got the 3 factions, and those factions will each have regions, and the regions will potentially have planetary systems and then planets and then land plots. Is there any forecasting of how many regions for regional DAOs there will actually be per faction? Is that something that's been finalized yet, or even anywhere close?
Yeah, not finalized, but I got an engineering update every 3 weeks. We do three-week sprints for internal planning and then execution. And so every 3 weeks we have a demo day, internal demo day. And I saw some really cool procedurally generated planets, 3-dimensional planets, and a plotting system for those planets as a result of that new system that's being developed that also, randomizes things like size of parcels of land, as well as the various resources that are going to be available on each one of those individual parcels. So in terms of quantity, though, again, what we want to closely model is the number of users and accessibility to land against total supply. So we do fully anticipate that land expands over time. Productive land is not necessarily a finite resource. It's a carefully balanced resource. In contrast, though, we do have 2 different versions of land, and that's, there's cosmetic land and then there's productive land. So productive land is extracting resources, and that could either be minerals that go into NFT crafting, or it could be farming resources, which goes naturally into the food supply. Cosmetic land, it refers to, player habitats or commercial structures on central space stations. Those will be probably more rare than the productive land. Productive land is a necessity for the economy to fully function, right? Because it allows players to create assets that then these player created assets then go into satisfying demand from new users that enter into the economy. Essentially, we kind of pull Star Atlas from the standpoint of selling assets. We slowly reduce the amount of assets that we sell, and at the same time increase the player's ability to create these assets, fulfilling that, again, supply and demand across the economy itself. Cosmetic, though, this is, it could be your guild hall, it could be a resting place, you could put your NFT art up in there. These could be art galleries or museums that are created by players. They could be commercial outlets like apparel stores, right? Whether you're selling digital NFT apparel, cosmetics, or if you're Nike and you hop into Star Atlas and you're actually selling shoes, which we see as a major opportunity going into the future, and displacer of things like Amazon. That's kind of big picture.
I want to jump in and say Nike is used as the main example. Is there some behind the deals announcement that's going to come in the future of a Star Atlas Nike something? Because I always hear a Nike example being used. So I don't know. Is this something to look forward to?
No, not yet. Not yet. I mean, I fully anticipate that they'll be interested in us when the time's right. Again, this kind of goes into the comment I made about our growth team and our strategic partnership and integration team. We want to be very careful and restrictive in the types of brands that we introduce into Star Atlas, especially in the formative stage. What we don't want is internet of the 90s where it was like pop-ups everywhere and advertising everywhere. We don't want to create that experience, right? We think it pulls people out of the immersion that we're creating here. So we're going to be pretty particular about who we enable to come in and when.
What movie was that? It was a Judge Dredd or one of the other ones. Like every restaurant is Taco Bell.
It was Demolition Man.
That's right.
Yeah, love that movie.
On the topic of assets and land and things like that, any thoughts about the current distribution of things like Tier 5 land claims, or even the balancing when you look across the three factions? Like when you created the concept, there was really no way to know who would lean in what direction. But are there levers that can be pulled? And like, what are the thoughts and considerations that go into balancing when we see numbers like this?
I would just suggest that these numbers have zero significance in the long term. Those are based off of rebirth rewards, right? So we ran the rebirth campaign, the digital art multimedia meta poster campaign from April to July of 2021. And those were accompanied by various game asset rewards based on collecting posters up to through a tier system. So they were strictly benefits for those people that were purchasing posters, and again, are not indicative of the quantity of supply that will be available or distribution of supply when we actually fully release land assets. I'll just take this as an opportunity because I do communicate this as often as possible, but the recommendation is not to speculate on purchasing any of those assets on the secondary market at this stage, because you have no knowledge, awareness whatsoever of what our pricing or availability is going to look like. So I would just wait until we actually reveal numbers about land itself before making any purchases, especially on the secondary.
With the different tiers, will you be able to upgrade a tier 1 all the way through a tier 5? And at the time of sale of these assets, once Star Atlas does make them available, will all of the different tiers be made available, or will you be starting at tier 1 regardless at the time of when you make it available?
There's still some internal discussion surrounding the full availability of various tier claims. To your first question, yes, you will be able to progress from a 1 to a 5, most likely. Subject to change, let me put that asterisk there, always subject to change. But yes, the idea is with virtually every asset in the game is that you can progress and improve over time through some reinvestment of resources back into that asset. There's a chance that we do not directly sell, say, tier 4, tier 5 land claims, yet to be determined on that.
What is the distinction, the difference between a freighter and a transport?
That's a great question for Danny. To be honest with you, I probably do not have the full distinction for you. I would be speculating in my response, to be honest.
Good old Theorycraft.
We do have a transport that's specific to people, human transportation, but I'm not actually confident that that's what's being defined there.
One of the ships already looks like a luxury cruise liner.
That
maybe host parties.
That actually is a concept. So
yeah, DJ events, I can see that happen. Speaking of ships like that, do you have a personal favorite of the ships that have already been released?
There's too many good ones, guys. I can't possibly pick a favorite out of everything that's coming out. Plus, seeing some of the new ships that have not yet been revealed, I just want to give it up to our creative team. I mean, all of this concept art is absolutely gorgeous. So no, I'm not going to pick any favorites. I like too many different ships, and I do have my own fleet that I've been building up over time as well, and I'm participating in Score, and I've got a nice little variety. But
same question for one of the races.
Whether or not I'm also not revealing which faction I'm in. Again, trying to maintain objectivity here, right? We don't want to influence anybody to participate in any faction. Right. No faction has a native competitive advantage. As you know, it's all that Rochambeau kind of rock, paper, scissors, a triangular approach of there's an advantage and disadvantage to every one of the factions, or call it a competitive advantage and disadvantage relative to the other factions.
Awesome. Fancy Hat, Ray, No Banjos had to part ways here. Yep. Any final questions you guys have for Michael?
I do have one that I've been thinking about for a while. What is Star Atlas's stance on ships that have more or less power than the current size model? So, for example, an extra small that has more guns than it rightfully should have, or a really large ship that doesn't have any protection and being valued perhaps below what current ship sizes are. The reason I'm asking mainly is because I remember the X4 can fit inside the Calico Hero, so I'm hoping I can get like a really powerful one that fits inside there as well.
Again, there should be balance, right? So if we identify that there's a particular ship class that is out of balance based on defenses, weaponry, speed, size, then it's likely to see those get updated over time. This is kind of the age-old rebalancing of character classes getting nerfed or buffed. Yep. It's going to happen. It should be expected. Of course, that is going to impact the value, the perceived value of any one of these assets, but it should be expected that that's going to take place over time.
I do have a question, different topic. During the town halls, which are great, by the way, that the team hosts for the community, the topic of education and safety come up a lot. So I just wanted to pick your brain and see if there was any updates for the onboarding and education side of Star Atlas and what that might look like. It would be neat if there's a course that you have to complete outside of anything showroom or Star Atlas specific, and then it leads them into having to enter the showroom, which then the education continues on lore or different ships. And so it's an easy bridge right over, and it's not like you learned it, you completed it. The education outside of wallet creation and then transferring money, and then what would need to take place after they set all that up is get into the showroom to maybe look at ships that they might want to buy, because that's the whole point of them doing that first educational walkthrough in the first place. So where is the team? Are there specific employees, or is there a department just for that? And has there been any updates on how soon we'll see something like that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Again, we do see ourselves as having an enormous responsibility to help protect people. It's not possible for us to protect everyone, right? And you guys know how many scams are out there. People with malicious intent are out there. It's impossible to protect everyone, but we do take it upon ourselves to provide information, education to this crypto onboarding and to simplify that process. One of the things we just released was kind of like how to get into Star Atlas. The trade-off for us is what friction do we introduce to new users versus how much protection do we provide for them? So I love your idea of having this course. I would say the course should probably be optional in order to access various components of the platform, but at least it's available. We're still in formative stages of educational content, but it is something that is top of mind for us. And in the meantime, what we're trying to do is just effectively communicate to people, especially the newer users who haven't heard it repetitively, just how important it is to protect your assets, not trust all of these sites, confirm what application it is that you're interacting with. So right now it's mostly just a communication strategy, but that is going to evolve into an educational platform. I guess I'll just close with, I've had multiple conversations now with educational platforms, not necessarily for crypto, but actually for people that are focused on things like STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This entity in particular focuses on minorities and female entrepreneurs that are looking to build companies in that space, in those fields. And they would like to use Star Atlas as a platform for doing that. I mentioned education as one of the core areas that we believe the metaverse will be useful for going into the future. So there's a couple of components there. One is, education to be able to use our platform from the user or gamer standpoint. There's education for the builders of the future. And then there's just broad education that people can access and use as a way to get informed and maybe better themselves, empower themselves going into the future. So nothing major yet. It is one of those things that we want to allocate some resources to, but hasn't been the immediate priority.
Fabricant we know of as a major player in the fashion side of what's going to be taking place in the metaverse, Star Atlas specific, or the dealings between Star Atlas and Fabricant. But I speak for all guilds, I think, when I ask this question. How early, if not right out the gate, are we going to be able to soup up our own citizens of Rome with any type of wear that we create? And what does that look like, whether it's sooner or later?
Well, I mean, certain things will come relatively soon with the launch of the DAC platform, which is where you'll be able to officially register your guild with Star Atlas. We are looking at a variety of toolings that we can provide that would enable you to do things like issue your own tokens or issue your own NFTs. Some of this is, let me caveat and say, we are undertaking legal review right now on what functionality we can actually provide. We want to ensure that we don't violate any of the regulations or laws that exist out there. But, we are looking at providing tooling. A part of that would be, some customization of a guild banner, a guild flag, a guild logo, right? To the extent that we can provide it and you can identify yourself on your equipment with that, we certainly want to provide that as functionality. If you're thinking about the ability to, say, create your own apparel that you sell, that's probably longer in the timeline. But to put on a piece of clothing that represents which guild you're in, that is the functionality we do want to provide.
Ship skin, ship decal, that'd be pretty cool.
Right.
There's actually there is a ship skin, a skinning product like tool set that's being developed internally. I don't actually have the latest update on it, to be honest with you, but in Danny's department, and it's one so we can create ship skins and other skins very seamlessly and rapidly. But I would see that as the tooling that we also provide, where you can customize that and put your own logos again, iconery into the design so that you can offer that to your guildmates. I think that's a cool thing, and in no way detracts from the economy. It just allows you to identify and with one another and form that tribalism that's kind of fun in games.
Right. Awesome. Glad to hear it. And the follow-up question to that was, if we or any guild creates a Colosseum, for example, would it be possible to have it look Rome-esque, like a faux Rome type of theme? What is the building going to look like? What does that include on the ends of like building out something that you would want to see as the theme of your guild, if there was one?
Very hard for me to say right now.
Okay.
I mean, the idea would be, again, to provide tooling for crafters. Now, to what extent are we able to provide optionality? I don't know, because it's very likely that we're going to provide some template system that you can use initially, right? Here's 10 different buildings that you can select, and you can construct those, and these are the resources necessary to do that. To come in and do full customization of an area of space is that's a little difficult, but it's also possible that, depending on where we're at with our own internal DAC relations, that we're able to provide some of these or fulfill some of these requests with our own development resources. So, you're a considerable guild, you hold a certain amount of polis in the DAO, you hold a certain amount of assets in game, you own land in this area of space, and you're looking for something customized, then maybe we can provide that. Again, wanting to ensure that we're fairly distributing resources to anybody, but I could see us establishing a program wherein, if you demonstrate to us kind of your economic commitment to the metaverse and to the economy, then we're able to provide some development resources to you as well, or open the doors for you to build your own resources, and assuming that they conform with standards that we've outlined, that we can actually implement or import those assets and let you use them. So these are all options.
Great, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question, and I'll take a moment maybe just to describe a little bit about what we see as the future growth and enablement of user-generated content, UGC, and that extends not only to like in-game assets, but also external world experiences. That at some point, we do anticipate that the universe of Star Atlas starts to absorb these microverses or mini-verses that will live initially through the game client, but external to the universe itself. We want to establish a standards for graphical fidelity, standards for economic design, and then, assuming that people can conform to these standards, and it is developed in a way that has relative uniformity with what we're building at Star Atlas, then we essentially allow that world to live inside the universe that is Star Atlas. And so it's something, there are geographic coordinates that people can actually travel to with their spaceships, right? But upon entering that world, that planet, call it, it could be a completely unique experience. And this is where it gets kind of interesting with the idea of a Steam-like publishing client, is that all of those worlds could actually be miniature versions of games. Now, that's not to say that you would seamlessly travel through their atmosphere with your ship, but that's essentially your entry point into that video game. And you might take your Star Atlas NFTs and then start playing some zombie hunter game or survival game, and earn experience for your avatars and your crew members that carries through back into Star Atlas. So
I could follow up again and, and ask, would there be any Star Atlas grant programs to help foster these types of projects that people might have, to like bootstrap it and then have it, for those that are hyper interested in seeing like a Colosseum look Roman and built and actually placed on land they might own as a guild?
I could certainly see some type of program being established for, like a grant program being established, certainly.
My final question to you before we let you go here is, are you feeling good about the current roadmap and the timeline for the things that are going to soon be released this year? Are you feeling pretty good about that?
I'm feeling really good about it. Yeah, we just last week we did go through a pretty big overhaul of what the roadmap looked like. Again, trying to assess timelines to delivery, enjoyability, and economy. So some of the stuff that we wanted to accomplish with land production, as happens in the ideation phase, gets bloated extremely quickly. So, once we get to the point where we're like, this is what we'd like to deliver, but we know that it's going to take us a year and a half if we actually build it out that way. We had to reassess and reduce down. And then it's a question of, well, how much do we get to utilize going forward? Score is a feature, for example, that is likely to be fully deprecated. Now, some of that functionality might be repurposed, but what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we're continuously introducing features that have no continuity behind them, right? So it's something that we want to be able to build upon. And that's what we're focused on this year, and where we've gone through and restructured the roadmap to focus again more on ship assets and these ship missions, which will directly lead into broader space exploration based on geographic coordinates, and that's where the land will ultimately live. So I feel really good about our roadmap this year. Not only do we have a major feature release coming for the mini game, possibly two would be aggressive in full transparency, but at least one major feature release in around mid-year, and then we also have a major feature release with the showroom coming out also around mid-year. So a major UE production output and a major minigame production output. I think that in and of itself would be quite a successful year, but there's we don't pump the brakes once we get those out. It's just right on to the next thing. So feeling really good.
Well, Michael, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We appreciate having you on. For those watching, we mentioned quite a few things. As you can see there, that's his Twitter handle. And of course, you're going to see the link for the Discord and for the website. And for anything that we've talked about, you'll find some links and ways to navigate through that in the description of the video. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We appreciate having you. And look forward to having you on sometime again in the future. We appreciate being part of the community as a whole, and just love the way that you guys are responsive. You hire from within the community, and things are looking good for the future of Star Atlas. Thanks for being on, Michael.
Absolutely. My pleasure, guys. Really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to doing this again in the future.
Are you ready for the next evolution in gaming? Blockchain game.
All right, there we go. We had that commercial playing at the end because that is actually something that we'll have as a part of the main video that's uploaded. But with that, what did you guys think of that interview? We wanted to approach it from a little bit kind of a different place than interviews that we've seen in the past. As I mentioned before, the idea was we wanted to kind of get into his head a little bit and kind of find out, the story behind why Star Atlas as a project is developing. So see some good feedback here. Glad that you guys liked it and appreciated it. Some of the questions we asked and the approach also came from you guys and your feedback, and especially those of you, the bulk of you, by the way. We still see the same folks show up again and again each week. We appreciate you being here. You're a part of the show. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I think it was smooth. Props to Jess in the editing of the raw footage that we had, and very smooth. Just had to throw it out there if no one else noticed. You can rewatch it and just try to notice those edit points. But the approach we wanted to take, like Jess said, was something other than the information that we already got from all the other videos. So appreciate you all for watching.
Yeah, as you guys know, sorry, Fancy, go ahead.
We do have more stuff coming up as well after this, so it's not the end of this yet.
Yeah, I like that you guys let them into the decentralization. You guys already know how I feel and how important that is to me. And this is one of the biggest things about this project is how he literally wants more than I've seen other projects to basically give this game back to the community.
That's interesting, Lumina. Yeah, in many ways, I did go light. I think one of the reasons it probably took us a while to get this interview is because I'm a bit known in a number of communities for coming at the executive team a little strong. And in this particular case, there's a lot of things that we just don't know that we don't know. And so I wanted to kind of approach it from a place of, hey, let's have a conversation. And I'm pretty sure that he'll be back. And there's other people like Pablo on the Star Atlas founders team that I'd like to get on the show. I'd like to continue this dialogue to understand what they are creating, because I think that's a big piece of it. There's all these projects that we're paying attention to out there now for how the metaverse is shaping and how it's forming. But I also want to understand like the motivations behind it, the inspirations, and what they're actually trying to create. What are the outcomes that they want from it? And I think that based on all the interviews that I've seen Michael do before, I think we're able to enter into a conversation that was just a little bit different than some of the other stuff I've seen.
And you know what? To take it back to Lumina's comment as well, what you saw there is authenticity. We don't push at these game developers because we're trying to get views or anything like that. We push at these guys because if we see something, we speak on it. And Star Atlas is our favorite game right now, really because, when we push at them, they've responded, and there's not as many holes as what we see in a lot of these other communities. So it is what it is. I mean, if we interview somebody and we see them as shady or something like that, yeah, you'll see more pushback. But with the Star Atlas team, we haven't had the ability to do that because they've been very transparent.
Yeah. And on top of that, the foundation room in the Star Atlas main Discord server has probably answers to many questions that you might have yourselves that you never shared before, that we wouldn't necessarily need to ask him anyways because it wasn't kind of relevant to the way we were trying to approach the interview in the first place. So also, definitely check out the foundation room.
Awesome, guys. So we want to dive into some other metaverse stuff. What do we got?
I could lead the charge with
What do you got for us, Ray?
Yes, sir, you can. Lead that charge.
Let me just share some stuff right now. And here we go. So, of course, we're going to do some Axie stuff because they're just doing $4 billion over the last 4 years from player-to-player trading volume, which, tell me that's not a milestone that's worth celebrating. I think so. And 25% of the ETH from this volume is now in the community treasury. So that's the fees that go towards the treasury. Yes, charge cannot charge. So this was from DApp Radar.
How is that treasury being used? So that's
not
interesting.
Used. Right.
So, I mean, if we were to think that 10% of 4 billion, was what, 400 million. So that means half of that. So 4.25. So you're looking at about 200, just shy of 200 million. That is a part of that treasury. What are they doing with that? And how does it impact those that are a part of the DAO and staking?
So that's the thing. It's not being utilized yet. So it hasn't been touched or tapped into for anything growth related or community related. That's soon to change. And if not, if I stand corrected, then sure. Like but I, for the most part, haven't been aware of anything that they've done. And they've basically said that it's going to be tapped into very soon for marketing purposes, for, I think, with this development program for community games to be built with the Axie assets, NFTs themselves. So that's something to keep our eye on. I'm sure it'll be a big announcement for the first things that it will be used for, because that's a lot of money. And then onwards here. So I did a quick review on the balance, the users, and the volume on DApp Radar for just gaming, the topic of gaming. And we have here for the users, top 10, we see DeFi Kingdoms and Axie Infinity. These are two projects that I'm personally a part of. So user base is totally different than, as you'll see, the balance and volume of a lot of the projects. So it's good to see that there's 2 projects that I'm invested in that are up there as far as users. And for anyone else who's playing these other games, maybe you can chime in and tell us what you think about those games. Um, yeah, and then
right quick, Ray, while you're pausing,
here we go.
Punjab question from the chat. Sell them Axie for Star Atlas. This is interesting to me because we just were talking to Wagner, and now we're talking about Axie, and we're talking. These are 2 communities of many who are talking about pulling other games in, right? And it's kind of like you see like corporate acquisitions in the real world right now, where corporations kind of end up buying each other up, right? What do you think as far as the Axie Star Atlas situation?
Yeah, I think they're juggernauts in their own right when it comes to the space. I think that projects are biting at the bit to just get into to be on the Ronin network as a project. I could only imagine the outreach that the developers are doing themselves, or the creatives of Star Atlas, and then also people who are learning from the traditional gaming space who want to get on a platform or a chain that is secure and was thought out to be so secure. So we'll see how it goes. I just think that it's inevitable at this point.
What is the floor on a playable Axie right now? Just
it's
one.
$25 to $30. I was just
$25 to $30, and you need 3 to play. So literally, a person can get a playable team for under $100 right now.
Yes, $20 to $30 range. But again,
to what Punjab said, sell those Axies. I can't sell mine. That wouldn't make any sense to sell mine because I paid a lot more than that for my Axies. So at this point, I'm in it to see where it goes.
Yeah, depending on when you got in, sure, you buy or you sell or trade it. Everyone's situation is different, depending on the timeline. But I don't think anybody would want to if you're interested in what the V3 Origins is going to look like, more like Slay the Spire, Hearthstone type of gameplay. It's going to be a whole revamp, essentially, with crazy additions with new cards and ear, eye, body parts that are going to be active with their own cards and effects. So who knows? Those Axies that you might have might go up in value because there's going to be a demand for not just those 6 zero breed, 6 trait pure class zero breed Axies as we're traditionally used to seeing, and which are traditionally bred in mass. So you're going to have these chop suey type of Axies that don't necessarily play well now in the arena turn out to be some pretty good Axies to buy, or to, if you have them, not to sell. But if we look at the balances here, we got DeFi coming under the radar. A lot of people might not still know about them, but they're on the Harmony network, and they're going to be bridging over to Avalanche on the 2nd of March. The perilous journey begins. So you can send your heroes that you have, no matter the class or the level of them, and all of that comes into effect and determines the success rate of if your hero will make it over to Avalanche on this quest. That's a limited time, and it's going to be, I think, for about a week or 2. I could come back on that, but definitely join the Rome Discord. All the information for details on DeFi Kingdoms is in one of those channels that we have. And so that's something I'm looking forward to.
They have 130,000 users. That's just like a small 20% delta from what Axie has right now. They've grown that much.
Yeah, like this game can triumph or just be just as big of a contender as Axie Infinity is. Like, in their own right, they've been very innovative and building a game on top of a Dex, where Axie built the Dex after they had the game, because they saw it as a necessity moving and as they grew in the space. So the dynamic between both are just great, and they're setting the tone for a lot of other projects, as we know, the 2 token model in game and then governance.
Are they active on Avalanche now, or is that still
on the 2nd? The quest begins for you to send out your heroes, and if you don't, then once there are heroes that trailblaze that path, then everyone else will need to follow, not sacrificing or risking their heroes, but it would be a smooth bridge over to Avalanche if you want to send them over to Avalanche to then take part in the mining, the foraging, the fishing, and whatever other quests that are going to be over there, similar to the Harmony Sarandale model.
So, not financial advice, but what do you see that being as an opportunity for people that are sitting right where they are now? They have not gotten involved in DeFi kingdoms. There's those like you that are familiar with how it's played out now on Harmony. What does that transition look like to Avalanche, and what is the opportunity for those that are paying attention now?
So if you want to play the game, which is just questing right now with this particular hero, you might not make that much because these items are all NFTs on the blockchain, which could be traded into Jewel. And Jewel is the only token next to Crystal, which will be only 25% of the total supply of Jewel that lives on Avalanche. So it's still technically one token. And those items that you get if you just bought a hero today, you can start to build up some type of chest of Jewel to then buy your second hero and then compound that. That's one way to go about it. But a lot of times there's a lot of suggestions and I would say advice on people who are trying to get in across different YouTube channels to jump into the liquidity pools with either Harmony ETH or Matic or Phantom. There's a whole list of different pools you can join in because that's where you would accumulate the most Jewel to then recompound into buying heroes. So now you're spreading yourself across and diversified within the game itself. So I personally did that. I went that route. So this isn't financial advice, but even when I started and even till this day, it seems like a pretty sound strategy to just get into liquidity, into the gardens where you plant your seeds, which is the equivalent to liquidity pool. And then you get those rewards in Jewel. And then you should buy your heroes from that point on and then start questing. And so you don't ever have to do anything on Avalanche. There's no need for you to go there. But on March 2nd, and then soon after, there's going to be liquidity pools or pairs that open up where the APRs are really high, as we know in the space those to be. When there's a new pool, the APRs are high, and then you could benefit the most from that. So if you did want to start technically fresh from the start, you can disregard Serendale, get your Avalanche on your MetaMask swapped over to Jewel, and then you could do single-sided staking with Jewel, or into the pairs. I'm sure there's going to be an AVAX Jewel pair, but in the beginning there'll just be a Jewel single-sided staking, and then it's up to you to either take your X Jewel out of the bank or the jeweler in the Serendale side, which lives on Harmony, and then bring it over to Avalanche to then reap those rewards. So yeah, I would say liquidity pooling is a better route to take.
So I see you're looking at DApp Radar. What is this? This is the game category on DApp Radar? Because as I look at this, it's like I don't recognize but a handful. I mean, DeFi Kingdom, Axie, Alluvium, nothing else really there is on my radar.
Yeah,
I mean, are there any of you other guys, or these projects you're paying attention to? Like, where'd they come from? What are your thoughts on them? Because for me, they're not anywhere on my radar.
So I'm aware of Rev Racing. I have the NFTs that they partnered with YGG, and then I was able to get the skin or 2 vehicles actually that you can play with. I haven't played the game, but this is a well-known racing game in the space, in the NFT space. Crazy Defense Heroes, I've played the game on my mobile. At the time, it wasn't as I guess it's been the same, but I haven't played in a while. But it was a pretty interesting game. It's like a tower defense type of game where you send your troops and you have to make it from point A to point B, and not have the horde of enemies get to point B from point A. It's a pretty entertaining game. It takes up a lot of time. Thought it was pretty cool. You could buy your heroes if in the game, so they're stronger. You could probably upgrade them. There's powers you can equip to the heroes, which are actual cards. Other than that, Alluvium, yep, just still waiting. And then not much else here. And I think Peg Axie is up here, but not on balance. I think it was on users. Yeah. When we get to that one. Anybody else playing any other of these games?
I mean, Wanaka Farm. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how many projects there are out there right now. And it becomes such a thing where, as is the case for any industry, and I've been through a number of different tech cycles, as a digital marketer, and then jumping into social media, and it's like you really have to start to put a fence around the things you pay attention to. So you're going to have to identify some criteria that's relevant to you. And one of the things that hopefully this show is helpful to some people for is that we become sort of an ear to the ground. But again, our ear to the ground just happens to be that appeal to us and that we're focused on. You have to discover your own thing that allows you to put a fence around the stuff that you pay attention to so that you can tune out the noise, because the noise is only going to get louder out there.
For sure.
Yeah, we've talked about this on past episodes. I mean, how many projects can you really be invested into? How many games can you actually play, even with scholars? How many games can you actually be interacting with? I've said it before, the NFT gaming metaverse space right now is where the ICO boom was back in 2017. In 4 years, you're not going to see, half of these games still alive.
Yeah.
The technology is going to get better. You have Star Atlas building an Unreal 5, and you have a lot of these games have very poor graphics, very poor gameplay, etc. So, a lot of things are going to die, and a lot of things are going to be born. And it's all about, like you were saying, Jesse, just paying attention to what speaks to you. That's where you're going to really win out.
It's interesting you say that, because as I look at this market as a whole, and I do Peg Axie, that is one I'm familiar with and I'm involved with. There is that I think that what happens in any developing market, even with the buzzword of the metaverse, is you will have opportunists, and lots of them come in, and their only thought is, how can we capitalize on the moment? How can we capitalize on the existing spin, the buzzwords, and the things that are going to grab people's attention in the moment? And the truth is, those are the projects that I personally look to stay away from. And as you heard, just some of the questions that we had in the interview with Michael Wagner, the CEO of Star Atlas, is about the foundation thoughts, because those are the projects that I believe are developing the metaverse as a whole. And that's kind of where my interest is. I want to know the foundation, what kind of things economically are they thinking of? Because the truth is, I believe that the thing that we most think about when it comes to play to earn gaming is that we will eventually be in a situation where that becomes our livelihood. And so sustainability in this space is going to come from those projects that are thinking long term. And so I want to filter out of my attention span anything that I think is just trying to tap into what is happening right now, but does not have their sights set on longevity. So that's kind of how I personally try and filter out some of these projects.
Yeah,
it's a good point, Jesse, because it kind of goes back to that comment earlier about you going easy on Michael Wagner, right? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at what's going to be sustainable. What do we think might possibly be a bubble and not sustainable? And where do we want to place our attention and our capital? And when you're comparing these different games and these different ecosystems, that's what you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, we could look at Pixelmon with their recent minting that took place of 3 Ethereum, generating over $70 million. And we don't have any pictures of them here, but Herocious, yes.
That's kind of gangster, man. A 3 ETH mint for a game NFT?
Without knowing anything, And what happened was
they went hard and then they went home.
Ooh.
Yeah, and there's a whole backstory on how the people who were developing the artwork were hired on Fiverr? Or Fiverr? Yeah, Fiverr.
Mm-hmm.
One of those platforms, and they didn't follow through and only made out with $1,000 or $6,000 out of the 70 million. So you just got to watch out there when these
on that note, man. I think it's important to state, for us as the founders of the Guild Rome, we have been taking our time with looking at how we form a DAO. Do we do a token launch? Do we create NFTs? Because the pioneer trail before us is riddled with casualties, because there are so many things you can do wrong. In fact, I would say that even if you go at it with the best of intention, you're going to find things that show up that you didn't anticipate, and it can wreck your game plan. The truth is we even have friends in this space that we know are creating a really good project, and they were hit sideways with some things that they're going to have to recover from. I'm confident they're going to recover from it, but it's just one of those things where you have one party, one person, one of the many variables out there that can make a project go sideways. It's a tough. This is the pioneering time, man. I was joking with the guys here before the show. It's kind of like every time you launch something in this space now, be it an IDO for a token, a DAO, or an NFT, it's like I don't know if you guys remember the old game Oregon Trail. I mean, I'm kind of dating myself. That is like a game from way back in the day. And like you set off on the trail and it's like, you died of dysentery. There's like all of these unknown obstacles waiting out there for any project in this space right now because it is that early on.
Absolutely. And you know, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to these things, but no one is foolproof. So you know, to do your due diligence and to discern what's going on in the space, it's becoming few and in between. It's going to be pretty hard going down the path of, there we go, we got a Pixelmon, and it was from Upwork actually, not Fiverr. And the videos and the artwork that was shown, which hyped up the project for them to make that much money, was fantastic. You know, if anyone else can do this and create the project for what it was going to be, I think it would have been a hit. But you got to know what you're buying and who the team is, and it's
interesting.
So this is what it's supposed to look like, and it's like a 3D Minecraft-y graphics.
But instead of 8-bit, it looks 16-bit. It looks like they added an extra bit to the mix.
Yeah, and so they sold eggs for 3 ETH, and they hatched recently, and the price went really down when people saw what they got in their egg.
Oh Jesus, that's great. Oh no! No!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Some of them weren't even there.
Yeah, they were invisible ones.
Yeah, like the developer, he just hired a load of people from like Fiverr and things like that, and didn't even tell them it was an NFT project.
We got to come up with a new rug. You got the slow rug and the fast rug. This needs to be like a bat to the face rug or something. We got to come up with something new for that, because that's just harsh. Yeah. That is harsh.
You didn't even see the sideways dragon. That one was a great one. You got people changing their profile pictures. People who are coming out saying, "I was one of the ETH minters."
I can't even tell what this one is. What was that one?
That was an ape.
No, the ape. No, the other one. Like that. What is that?
Yeah, there were plenty of them like that.
Yeah.
Under the
Not to laugh in everybody's face out there, but you guys, you gotta be careful. You know, this space is dangerous. I mean, you know, I lost money in 2017 ICO boom, and a lot of people, it's like Gary Vee said. You know, he said something like 90% of NFTs are going to go to zero, and it's going to be the same for some of these so-called gaming projects who aren't creating real games. Alex Becker talks about it on his channel. It's not something where you should be dropping your whole house into. And I hear that sometimes. It scares me. I see it on social media. Guys are talking about they're going to finance their house and do this and that, just like they were doing back in 2017 in the ICO boom. Don't do that to yourself, because this is terrible.
Right.
It's like a mafia rug, the one you got rolled up in on your way out to the desert.
Mafia rug, I like it. Hey, shout out to Punjab right quick from the chat once again with another great comment. So on top of all that, will regulations get you? This is one of the key facts that I think gets overlooked a lot of times in these games. We're gonna have to deal with regulation in the metaverse gaming space, just like they are in crypto, and it's very important to look at these projects and analyze who's going to get hurt by, like you have rugs where the developers leave on purpose. That was always the plan. But these soft, slow rugs, a lot of times they just aren't able to complete the job. And so they end up rugging, you know, and another type of rug is a regulatory.
Another type of rug is a regular. Figures in one of those recently, a slow rug where they just didn't deliver over time, and it was actually ended up being an easy.
They realized they can't do it.
Yeah.
And so another one is regulation. When regulation comes in, you know, we haven't really seen that yet in space, but it's coming in. And one of the big keys to me is decentralization, and that's why I like Star Atlas with Michael Wagner so much, because he's focused on trying to decentralize the product, you know, basically as soon as possible. You can't build a product decentralized, but once it's built, you got to let it go. And I think he understands that, which is very key. A lot of these programs in these games are acting like decentralization is not going to be important in the future. It very much will be when you start talking about regulation.
He said a number of key things that support what you were saying. He was talking about how they want to be able to maintain governance control for 5 to 7 years, because that's kind of the window for them to exercise the vision that they have before they can release it into the wild. But he also talked about SDKs. He talked about a lot of things that suggest open source, which means that they have an intention of building this platform that then creators can use, whether that's creating skins, whether that's creating your own stadium for a coliseum within the space, or whether you're trying to build an entire game world. And like you said, like, right, it'll be a while before you can literally fly into a different game world in your Star Atlas spaceship, but it can still be built on this as a platform. So that way the economy, and by the way, for those of you, Polis is a steal right now, not financial advice, but I'm scooping it up because this vision for what the metaverse is going to be in the long run, that governance is who's going to be able to take advantage of and be rewarded for the GDP of this game world that can become a Ready Player One game world down the road as they create this super highway for other developers to participate in. They're not trying to hold this close to their chest like we know Facebook's and Microsoft's and all of these other attempts at creating metaverse worlds are going to do. They're going to try and keep it as much in their circle of influence as they can. What Star Atlas and similar projects are looking to do is they're trying to build this infrastructure that other people can build on and participate in. So Polis is an opportunity to get early on, like ancestry governance for this thing that can become my view of what Star Atlas.
Your voice, you went underwater.
I went swimming.
Yes,
you're back.
Yeah, that's my view of what Star Atlas is creating is the infrastructure, and that's what's exciting to me. Yeah. And another reason I continue to scoop up Polis.
I think it's important how you said looking to do, and we always got to remember that. I mean, even Wagner in the interview was talking about Bitcoin, right? And you see Ukraine taking donations in Bitcoin, and there's a difference there as far as digital assets goes, and not financial advice, obviously, but when you're buying these metaverse governance tokens, you buy AXS, you buy Polis, you buy these things, you're betting on the developers creating something that's going to be working in the future. You know what I mean? And you got to remember that. You know what I mean? Whereas with like a Bitcoin or something like that, you're actually investing in a project that's more complete and decentralized.
There you go. A lot of these projects, they're getting better at creating these slower rug pulls. So you just make sure that the times are changing very fast. And before it was just off of hype. And, we could go back to 2017 ICOs, and then now we got the IDO, we got the NFT space. Just, it's crazy out there. So just make sure you're following up with, sources like ours out there that are keeping up on projects, giving opinions, and then just calm down a little bit. You're going to get rich over time, not in a day.
Calm down a little bit.
Well, you got this screen up there. We see that there's only one user base in green that's had massive growth, and they do have some momentum. That's Pegaxi, although their in-game token for earnings is down quite a bit. I think it's in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 cents, something like that. So I've felt that, but I promised you guys that in the future being probably next week, that I'm going to put together kind of like what my deep dive into Pegaxi was, or it has been. I think I have around 26 pegs now. So yeah, I'll share with you guys like straight up transparent what I've done from start to finish in there so far.
Nice. So we look forward to that, Jess, and I think a lot of the audience will as well. But on that note, the topic of that, so learning more about the projects is also always something you want to do, and you can always check out on February 2nd on the Axie Infinity's Twitter page, the marketing origin, which was an hour and 15 minutes, where they had the marketing lead and the lead product developer for the game and land play, as well as G-Host and the whole team. Just they were there, great information. Definitely check it out, and you definitely want to listen to that because they're taking the next steps of this next phase of growth that's going to be coming around. So the evolution of Axie. So this is continuing. If you haven't noticed the Axie Infinity news here. So back in the day, 2018.
Were you playing when it looked like this, Ray? I know you're an OG.
Yeah, I got in right after it ended. So all I have experienced was this. But at the time, this wasn't a generic game where you just had these axes that you automatically received to play with. And what you would do is pick the moves for your axie. So it was deeper than just having axes with a set class and move set, and then send them out there. But you would pick for each axie on your team of 3 what moves you wanted. So there was much more thinking and strategy that went into the game, even back then, than just having it like we see maybe like a peg axie or these other racing games where you just click and go and then wait when it's already programmed to know who's winning or losing. So it's not even worth seeing your horse racing. It's more of a waste of your time to do that, other than just clicking it and having it done. In this game, you would have to set it up and then see what happened based off what you've created your axie like, to see if it was competitive or not. And that's something I would want to know and stick around for, other than seeing a horse just race after you clicked it, and it being programmed to have one winner or the top 3 in that way. So
I think it's in a similar place, because with Pegaxi, they have all these stats, right? They have your speed, your strength, fire, wind, all these different things that don't really come into play right now. But it's kind of like, how you have with Axes, there was certain components that just don't play into things right now. Right. And the end result is a number generator. So people are just clicking, but at least they left room for those things to become factors. So at a later date, it'll be competitive.
Right.
Gameplay.
Something to look forward to with any of these games that are doing that, because that's why we're here. We want to see it evolve and get more competitive. So this is some of the artwork from the marketing lead. They're going to be reaching out. This is what you're going to see for Google Play Store and Apple Store, because Axie is coming to an app near you, an Apple Store or Google Play Store near you. And this is
there a confirmed date on that, or do we have? Okay.
No confirmed date, but it's being worked on, and we're getting some information shared with us on Twitch by the marketing lead himself. So, battle fierce monsters, play powerful cards, build your dream team. Doesn't this want you to just buy axes? Explore the world in PvP mode, right? There's going to be a whole revamp of the whole card game. So it's something that the whole community is looking forward to. And watch out for those prices. These are these arbitrage opportunities that people, if they didn't like the game, could still take advantage of. Speculating, not financial advice, but the ebbs and flows of any particular game and their market after new updates came around, you could always, see a spike up in price. So the artwork is great. They were doing their thing with the marketing team, and then there was moving on to the burning of your axes, right? The Axie sync, the first tested Axie sync of sending your axes on a journey, that concluded. And there was a raffle that was live on Twitch that you guys could watch if you wanted to know who won. But what I thought was interesting, why I even have this up here, was that the winner of the raffle of these 5 AOC tokens, which, there's a floor, an estimated floor around 5 to 6 Ethereum. But they usually sell for much higher than that because there's only 1,000 of them. And you need 5 to roll and mint a new Axie that has the potential of having one or all of its mystic, or one of all of its body parts mystic. So the winner of these 5 was a scholar on a team, and he only sent one Axie on the journey. So some people sent hundreds, 500, close to 1,000 Axies, and this guy who only sent one Axie actually won the raffle. So cheers to him. And that's it. That was it for the Axie stuff. Yeah,
I think I would probably just put one in the game. I'm not a lot. I've never been that guy that buys lottery tickets. I don't like to play the luck scheme. I try and sit on my skill somehow. So yeah, maybe one just to put it out there. But amazing that it actually went to somebody that only put in one.
Yeah, people were pretty.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Jess. Like I'm never been like a mystery box buyer. I can't stand RNG. I mean, funny enough, I tend to do decently well RNG wise, but I still, as a rule, I never buy in.
Yeah. Good stuff, Ray. That was good stuff, man. It's I keep waiting for like what is going to be the big thing that brings like SLP right now. What is it? It like still under 2 cents, Axie was the original OG gangster coming out the gate, making big things happen in the space. Are they going to maintain their title, or is somebody going to knock them off the perch and like step up and become that new whatever? I think it's theirs to lose. Depends on how they run with all those amazing pools of treasury assets they have, and what's next. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with them. It's their game to lose at this point. They have the money. They were the first to actually do it. They got hit over the head with being the first to do it, and there's a lot of competitors now, so they got to step up. But I mean, it's theirs to lose. Still, they have the runway.
But I will say, time is not on their side.
No, not at all. Not with all these games that are coming out. You have anything on that Champions Ascension, Ray?
No slides.
Or you just want to talk in general? Okay.
Yeah, we could cover it briefly. So you want to boot it up or?
I don't have anything I don't have anything slide wise, but for those of you who don't know, Champions Ascension is a game that we've been following, and they did their drop. I think it was Tuesday, right? So, or not Tuesday, a couple of days ago they did their drop. Anyway, they didn't sell out all 10,000. I think the final number was around 7,000 or 8,000 that they sold as far as their initial Prime Eternal NFTs. And as usual, the drop didn't go perfect. But the way they've been doing basically constant around the clock AMAs and what they've been talking about as far as building the community kind of reminds me of a Star Atlas situation. It's a different type of game, but it looks good. So
can I ask a couple questions from like, I would imagine, like many of the listeners that may have never heard the project. So what was the first, why are you even looking at them? What was, in like a snapshot, what caught your attention that says, this is worth my time?
So if I may, so they have these Prime Eternals, which are only 10,000. And within those 10,000, there's different rarities. It could be a full pure, or it could have 5 Prime Eternal parts. So, but that's not what attracted most people from buying. It was because you will have a plot of land for every one of these Prime Eternals that you've minted or purchased on the secondary market, and then you'll also passively accumulate the land token that or the token. There's going to be a governance and also a utility token that's in the game. So you would also have these tokens accumulate over time. So there's many.
You'll be able to stake them like the Star Atlas ships. You can stake the Prime Eternals.
Who's behind it, and why should you care? Because there's tons of programs out there and projects that are doing like, oh, look what the cool stuff we're doing. Why should we believe this one? Who's behind it to where like you think they can even pull off what they're saying they'll do? Because everyone can talk.
Okay, so Jam City is an American video game developer, and they are a very successful one at that. And it was tens of millions of dollars of a gaming company, and they've built a lot of games in the space. And one of the co-founders is from MySpace, and there's the former 20th Century Fox executive. So there's prominent names that are world renowned in the space of gaming, and then other departments or other industries, and that's just from Jam City, which is a traditional gaming company, social gaming network. So it's been alive since 2012, the inception, up until from 2010 to 2016, formerly known as Platform G. So but nevertheless, you're gonna have all these. So that's where the most confidence comes from, outside of just all the perks that you'll get for buying or minting and holding these NFTs. And then also Zero, who is the founder and the one you might be hearing the most of in any of the stages in the Discord. They had a 48-hour run to celebrate the minting, right, and to see if they can essentially get rid of all 10,000 to be minted. And there was another prominent name in the space that does a lot of analytical work named Max Brand, and he was working with the project. And what the project founder also mentioned was that he's best friends with Phil La from Axie Infinity, who is the lead developer for Land. So
So they have experience in the industry that lends towards the fact that they could probably pull it off. So it's not just talk, it's not just a plan. They actually have some history to back it. Is there a timeline, as Punjab is asking here in the chat? Is there a timeline for how they plan to deliver and how far off are we? Is gameplay in something like this? Is it like Q3, Q4? Is it Q1 of next year? Anything? No idea.
So there's no roadmap. There's no white paper per se. There's a lot of information that was talked about and that you might find on different websites, but even one of the community members asked that of Zero, the founder, if there can be a consolidation of all the information that's been talked about or on different websites so we can have a go-to place like we do with other projects who are legitimate in the space, or check off one of the marks of legitimacy in the space. So no, I can't really talk in confidence on any dates, but it's more of like a World of Warcraft type of game. And it's a promising game as far as like where your imagination can take it. The art is great. Like, so everything kind of checks off as a game that somebody would be interested in, even like OGs in the space. But there's a lot of like holes in what's going on, and they banned some prominent community members, Max being one of them, from the Axie community. Right? They Zero and the founder did their rounds of promoting the game, going into different Discords and group chats to help promote and foster some support or some interest, and it worked. Like I've gotten, I'm seeing where it goes. It's something I can afford to lose, thankfully. But it's nothing you ever want something to happen like that. So but
we're in this interesting space in NFT gaming where much of the returns that a person can see is getting into a project early, letting the project catch enough hype to where then you can flip your NFTs and you're safe. You were there. You got out. You kept some for yourself, but you made some profits by selling out. There's so many projects out there, and now it's like we're starting to. I think the industry as a whole is starting to get wise to all of the slow rugs, the fast rugs, all of the things to look for. Is a company doxed? I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of one that I've had my eye on for about 4-5 months now, called Gaia World. The stuff they're creating looks beautiful, but I don't trust them. Their freaking executive team just seems sketchy to me. The way they communicate in their Discord is sketchy, but what they're building looks beautiful, but I'm afraid to touch it. And I certainly wouldn't recommend it because of the way that they communicate with the lack of communication on stuff. So there's just so many projects out there. At some point, hopefully there's going to be some good projects that say, look, we understand that transparency and communication, these are the milestones we need to meet along the way to keep a community interested. Otherwise, they're not going to take us serious.
Yeah,
I think that's key, what you're talking about, Jesse, as far as how they communicate, right? So I've been obviously involved in just as many, way more actually, rugs and failures than I have been successes. And the way they communicate, you start to see a pattern with how much communication you're getting and the detail level of communication that you're getting. That's why we like Star Atlas as much as we do. Right. So with Champion Ascension, what I've seen is a desire to push the value. What they've been saying is that, hey, we're a successful game studio already. We're not looking to get a whole bunch of money off of NFT sales or off of this first drop. What we're actually looking to do is reward our first adopters and have them be the ones that are selling. So the land, like Ray was saying, is going to come to the people who first bought the NFTs, and the token is going to be dropped to the people who first bought the NFTs, et cetera, to where they're trying to push the value, the earnings off of themselves and into the community, which obviously is going to benefit them a lot better in the long run. And that's a perspective that I haven't seen in a lot of these games so far. A lot of games, like, we could all mention ecosystems where they're all just selling and taking the money for themselves. And that's a problem with the economy, right? Because if you're the developer and you're sucking the value out of your own economy that you've created, then obviously that economy is not going to be healthy. Whereas if you push the value into the economy and allow the economy to kind of gestate and build on its own, then you're going to have a much more successful future. So I don't know. Like Ray said, there was some shady stuff that went on. And like I said, the drop didn't sell out or anything like that. It's nothing that people should be betting the house on, but it's something that's going on right now in the space, and it's pretty interesting. So I invite people to check it out.
Yeah, and just to wrap up that Champions Ascension, the main things that basically happened was that the metadata was revealed before or during the minting. So around 2,500 plus mints were already took place, and then after that, the metadata for knowing at what mint number the rarest champions or Prime Eternals would be mintable, it was released and it was shared. So now, even though there's a mint up until 10,000, you just have to wait until these people who are unknowing of what's going on mint at a cheaper price, because it was a declining mint from 1 Ethereum up until 0.4
Dutch auction
for 48 hours. Yeah, Dutch auction of a mint, and also outside of that, it was the banning of those members who were in support of the project, which was kind of sketchy, and it was off of the community's vote. It wasn't any mod or founder per se, but it was a vote,
which is key, actually, right? Go into that
Not
more in
necessarily.
detail. Okay, go into that, Ray. Go into
because
that, yeah.
because Max Brand himself was helping the project, so there was some discrepancy and information that was happening inward, like on the inside, and it wasn't communicated well to the community for why it happened, and it would just put a bad taste into a lot of people's mouths on the side of the.
But was his ban? Was his ban actually legitimately voted, do you think, or do you think that it was more shady than that?
No, because it didn't even start because of Max or any other Axie Infinity community member, which there was only one who was actually. It was like some drama happening in the Discord, but it originated with not the person or people who were banned. So then, after the fact, then the metadata came out, and for what it's worth, it all started because the Zero, who wasn't able, the founder of the project, he wasn't wanting to dox himself on LinkedIn,
right?
Because that's what was requested. And if it's something as simple as that, then it's definitely
which is kind of shady,
right? Because and then
But I was asking about the vote itself, though. The vote itself. Do you think the vote itself was legit, or do you think the vote itself was maybe not legit?
I don't think so. I think it's important to have community voting. All right, but when there's some drama that comes up, it kind of was reminiscent to Gala Games, where it's just like it's a mob horde. It's mob rule. It wasn't like anyone knew or cared. They just didn't want the negative vibes. The quote unquote negative vibes. And
You know what some of this space reminds me of now with these projects they're starting. It reminds me of early Kickstarter days where, like, in a Kickstarter, I might have bought a really innovative iPhone 6 case and it's being delivered to me now when I got my iPhone. When you can't even use it anymore because they're promising all these things early on, but they just never end up delivering. And so it becomes this thing like, who mentioned it here just a little while ago? Where's it at? Oh yeah, about actually not selling NFTs before you have a product. The challenge with that is that the model right now is you're using it as a capital raise.
Mm-hmm.
But you should be respectful with your capital raise. And then the other thing that I heard mentioned, I want to comment on, was talking about an NFT not minting out to full sale. That to me doesn't bother me as much because that's even a guessing effort. Like even for ourselves, looking like our internal discussion, if we want to launch our own internal NFT, what numbers should we come up with so that we do sell out? That's a tough thing to decide, and I don't know that really dictates how significant a project is.
And to be fair with Champions Ascension, they didn't sell out, but their idea is to burn the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're going to actually do this or not. Who knows, right? But if they actually do burn the rest, then I think that's a positive. That's the kind of thing that we would do, right? So
it might be like Gala, like slightly light them on fire and put them out real quick.
Well, see, that's the worst case scenario, right? Like if they don't actually burn the extras and they go ahead and do a re-release later after they get some more hype, then super shady, right? That's the kind of thing Gala would do.
Yeah.
But it all isn't lost, right? There's still some promise there, and it was just these little things that pop up that I take into consideration when I'm personally investing into a project, because that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think you and me talked backline or off stage, Ray, about it. I feel like I'm gonna go light on this one, not hard, but I like it and I hope it does well. We're talking about Champions Ascension, so I don't know if you got anything before you close out on that.
No, I'm pretty much wrapping up. I'm done.
We got anything else?
There's a couple more things from Star Atlas this week. We haven't talked about any of the new ships, I believe.
Oh yeah, thank you.
New ships.
Yeah,
Bring it on.
This is it looks like another version of the Mosquito. Of sorts. Yeah.
The Ogrica Mick.
$710 USD equivalent, and there's a 12,000 supply. So in some ways it does seem, here's what I do like. It feels like Star Atlas is staying in line with their pricing model from the start of the GAL. And we haven't seen that in like other projects where they just continue to scale their pricing. The thing that they have done, which seems appropriate, is increase their supply. And of course, as you have more people coming to the project, that seems like a worthwhile thing to do, because then it makes sure that the more people that want to participate to get the ship that they desire, they have access to do that.
the idea you just expressed is really important to me, though, Jesse. They're not pushing to change their funding model a great deal based off current times, which is what we normally see. Is we see these projects become predatory, where they get more attention and they raise prices, and you're not seeing that with Star Atlas, which bodes well to the future, hopefully.
And look at these ships. I like how there's diversity in ships. These things are basically single seaters, the $35, 275,000 supply, but these are bombers. These things you see in that first picture, that big ball on the ground, and then you see the other two pictures where the underbelly is missing. These things just literally carry around half their body weight in a bomb. $35. Don't piss someone off if they got $35. They may bomb you.
So you see my reply here, because I bought one. Because we talked about it last week, right? So they're so cheap to us, and you could have a swarm of these things coming through to terraform somebody's planet for them, bringing them some freedom, like we know, right? So, I mean, I like that idea. Go ahead, Jess.
And lends towards what Michael Wagner was saying when we were asking about Titan ships. Titan ships, the question I did ask him and I wanted answers to is the idea to be a kingmaker here? And I did like the fact that he went on to say that, truthfully, this is a great marketing opportunity that benefits the community as a whole. And that the idea is that these are not designed to be invincible. So who knows? You could probably have a gang of 1,000 Unabomber riders from Brazil and some, between these and X4s that say, you know what, we don't like this Titan in our airspace, and they can actually have an impact. So that part is nice, at least to know that the thing is not invincible, and also that they're still in the works of thinking it through as to how they'll bring it into gameplay without it being so incredibly disruptive.
Yeah. The first thing I saw when I saw this was, does it go faster when it doesn't have a bomb? Could it be like an actual viable racer if you're not armed?
I would think it would have to. It literally just lost half its, probably more than half its body weight.
Yep.
I would love it. Idea, Fancy. That's a great idea.
Yeah, if they could be customizable for racing, that would be fantastic.
But then again, they'd have to have races with and without the bomb. You got to be able to have that maneuverability skill to get through a track carrying all that excess body weight.
Or right at the beginning of the race, you just drop it, take out half of your competition, and just move on. And there you go.
Right at the starting line.
Mario Kart.
No, I can see myself picking up a lot of Unibombers. The only issue I have with it is that the maintenance on it is slightly worse than the Jet. So you really have to be on your 24-hour timer with that thing.
Yeah.
Literally 24 hours, and you're not earning, which I haven't screwed that up yet. But the way I move around, I'm probably going to screw it up at some point in the future and be pissed, especially when I have multiples of these things, and I'm really, making some money off it. Because right now, I just bought one just to get it started, and I'll, keep buying a few more here and there, because I was in the chart, Champions Ascension and stuff like that. But you think about it, and if you're actually making some money off of that thing, you don't want that thing to stop earning.
Yeah. Did anyone get any Ogrica mix?
No, it just,
not yet.
I don't know. I mean, like, what does this say right here? Generous amenities fill the cabin with comfortable living space for 2. Get cozy with your shipmate and bring a ration or 3 because an additionally equipped fuel module will allow for those lengthy space patrols and deep space security escorts. For me, just personally, when I look at my fleet as a whole, the things that I have, I just didn't see a place where it was a must-have, and it didn't have the nostalgic appeal to me that this particular thing does, especially for the price. For $35, I'm going to grab a couple just because I think they're cool looking. As where for $7.10 for a small ship, that I don't know its practical application that I don't already have covered in a ship. That's all.
Yeah,
for me.
I picked up a good fleet of those bombers, those Unibombers, just because if we can terraform and plant seeds to grow whatever we want or to change the landscape, I think that would be a good addition to the team of what I have already.
Yeah,
it's described as a luxury ship, and you can really tell from like the pictures, especially when compared to like a thimble.
It looks like that, the one that I was saying is a cruise ship. So this is related, right? Is this the same line?
That's Busan.
Yeah, it is. Ogrica, yeah.
Yeah, Ogrica and Busan are different.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I meant thanks.
But, yeah, it does
that's
look
another
like...
Ogrica ship right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Like when I think in terms of like,
So are they supposed to be a luxury line, Jess? This Ogrica? So is the Ogrica supposed to be a luxury line?
Looks like it.
It's fascinating in build because it makes you wonder, like I always try and think in terms of lore. So you've got this alien race that is building this version of a ship that has some organic lines and patterns to it. Like the first one, we were jokingly saying it was like a mosquito for quite some time. And this one has interesting patterns and these wings and things. And I always have to question how much of the design is for atmosphere and how much of it is for space, because there's aspects where you don't need much in space. I think one of my favorite designs overall probably is the wedge that is the Ohm. I think that's a sexy looking ship, and this is beautiful in design, but what does the application do for the ship itself? Like this thing, it's a wedge, and I always was fascinated by the design. I think it should win a design award because if you flip it on its side, it has the same build of the ship, no matter what angle you flip it to. Pretty ingenious.
This still has my vote.
I'm a big fan of the
Hero's a sexy
myself.
So there was also a roadmap report this week. Got a couple more pictures with it.
So sleek, so clean.
What is that's a seat of what?
So we also got a tweet with this on it, and I think it's the same thing.
Well, it's an opal.
Yeah, it might not be like the Opal Jet, but perhaps it could be. Just looks different, maybe. But I also thought this could be like a seat module. Maybe you could swap it out to upgrade it. This could be one of the things you could do.
Yeah. So in this area, it looks like maybe when the last picture was just a part of the seat, because this now looks like it's nestled in a cockpit. As we're there, it looks like it's not. The module is not sitting in the actual ship.
Sure.
Yeah. Because there, it's the same thing. We see the front of it, but now it has stuff surrounding it.
I don't really know what this is, to be honest. I thought it was like a Darth Vader helmet when I first saw it.
Well, that looks like it's the back side of the... So like the seat, if you just click on it, I think the seat itself is right below. I think that's above your head. And you would be facing us, the camera. That's how I'm seeing it. So, but again, I don't know what the point was for sharing that, if that's the case.
It made us think.
It's shiny. What else we got?
That's pretty much it. We're at the 247 mark.
Let's bring up this question from Rob Megger from the chat. If you could, in the background, Fancy, maybe get that picture out of admin that I just posted. So Rob Meg is asking, curious, before we go, curious if you guys have an opinion on the changes to Gala Power and Town Power. I wasn't aware of this. This is just coming out right now from Rob Meg, and he shot me a link. So I'll put that. Yeah, we'll put that on the screen. I don't know if it's breaking, but they did make a change, and I haven't been paying attention. But essentially what they've done, so they basically made it so that in the Town Star game that some of us have been playing, the number of NFTs you can place, which is what allows you to earn in Town Star, is going to be controlled specifically by the Gala coin itself. And then the amount of town that you own, their town coin, is going to control the amount that you can actually earn. So they're changing their tokenomics a bit here, and they're changing the earning mechanics of the only game that you can actually play and earn in right now on the Gala ecosystem. I think this is good, right? However, what we're seeing is the fact that this is all brand new. Everything out here is brand new, and nobody's created a successful gaming play to earn ecosystem yet. And Townstar, which is one of the ones that we have some community members who have actually, kind of retired on, or they're making a bunch of money on at this point because they were in so early, is still making changes to their model.
And well, Town is as recently as the beginning of December. So what are we talking about? Just 3 months ago, it was at nearly $2, but now it sits at 11 cents, and doesn't seem to have found a bottom yet.
Well, they're kind of in an Axie situation, right? That's what I would call. I call it loosely. It's not really this, but I call them loosely like burn tokens, right? So this is the token that you're being paid in, which is so you have a constant sell incentive on this token. You have constant sell pressure because people who are trying to play this to earn are gonna obviously want to spend this token. You need more, and this is one of the things that Champions Ascension talks about, in their AMAs, which is what I liked about them, is they were saying, hey, we need more ways to burn these tokens. You can't just pay somebody in a token and then the only use for it is to sell it immediately, because that's why you have these token drops in Axie and in all these other games.
There's got to be need this token incentive for them to take onto it. Yeah.
And you see this a little bit in Atlas, right? Because Star Atlas, their burn token, their sell pressure token is Atlas, right? And they've had some problems with the token price as well. However, they are utilizing access across their ecosystem for you to be able to spend it on things. And so for you to resupply your ships, you have to use the Atlas token. That's one use. I think the Atlas token probably needs more uses. And you see right now Gala with their 2 tokens on this one game trying to adjust to basically economics and how these things are going to work in a metaverse.
Yeah. But what you say is absolutely true. I think there's all the projects are feeling that pain right now, because if we went back to was December 16th when December 16th, Atlas was at 12 cents. And that was the day that they launched Score. Since that time, it's dropped all the way down to 3 cents. So it's literally lost 75% of its value from the day that Score launched. So there's no projects that are immune to this. And hopefully what they're doing now is going to start building in more levers that they can pull to kind of stabilize that and balance it out. I think that's what most projects now, even the one that you guys mentioned to me that I don't think we're talking about yet on the show, when I was watching their video, the thing that impressed me is that how much attention they're paying to putting in place enough levers that they can pull to balance out their tokenomics and stability of their in-game coin.
And what you didn't say there, but you kind of lightly mentioned, is the fact that the entire crypto market is down. And like we said at the beginning of the show, I mean, we're dealing with, war going on across the world right now. So the markets are going to see a lot of sell pressure because of that, as people try to shift their value into mediums that they feel like are most important during these times.
Right.
What we haven't seen, and what's very important, is a decoupling from these various currencies from the basic broader crypto community. And that's what we're looking for when we're talking about these metaverse projects, is eventually you're going to have a metaverse project where the value of their token is not linked to Bitcoin. and it's not linked to war between Ukraine and Russia, where it's linked to what's going on in that game, period, point blank. And when we get there, that's when you're going to know that we actually have a metaverse. Right now, it's still building and everything's still in the process of decoupling, and nobody's made a strong enough economy yet. That's what you need. You need a strong economy to allow it to decouple.
You were spot on. What makes when I think of that, I think of like the GDP of a Second Life at $650 million, to where there's enough events and activity going on in there that are going to hold people's attention to where external events can happen, but people are still like saying, hey, there's enough important things going on in this world economy that it's going to help to stabilize it and, like you say, decouple it from what is happening with the rest of the market. We're not going to probably ever see that completely, simply because the nature of humans is that, news impacts us, and fear and FUD and FOMO, all those things remain real, and they tend to carry over into all different ecosystems. So I think we'll still see some of that, but eventually we will be able to see some metaverses and some in-game economies stand on their own and decouple as best as we can imagine.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever reach a point where war will not impact all facets of human society, right? If there's humans at war, I think it'll always probably impact all of us. However, like you also mentioned, you need enough stuff going on to where, because people, we've said this for a while, right? People aren't going to stop playing games because Bitcoin decides to go into a bear market. Right. And similarly, people aren't going to stop playing games because unrelated countries are at war, so you're going to have these tools that are going to be available for strong economies to stay afloat during troubled times. But we're not there yet. We're looking for it to be there, but it's not there.
Yeah. We got anything else? Where are we at, guys?
That was the end of it for Star Atlas.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if we have any other external news. I think we've covered quite a bit. We're almost at the top of 3 hours now. We had the Michael Wagner, CEO of Star Atlas, interview. We started off talking quite a bit about, happenings in Ukraine and things that are related to the metaverse and to blockchain and to the internet that are playing a role in things as they play out there. Do we want to close things out now? I think, are we done? Or do we have anything else that we need to add?
Seems like it, yeah.
I think we're good to go.
Yep. Awesome. So with that, folks, thanks for being here with us. Again, this was our 30th, technically our 37th straight week, but 30th as the Metaverse Nomads. We did our first 6 shows under another brand prior to that as the Miranda's Gentry. But we really like having this conversation with you. We appreciate you being a part of this. We also thank you for your dialogue and conversation as we start off talking about Ukraine. Our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, we see you. We support you. We're all inspired by your resilience and the way that you are defending your personal freedoms and your way of life. And we will continue to support you in that. Folks, be on the lookout for, in the description here, how you can contribute. Or if not, you can simply go to Twitter and look for the official Ukraine Twitter account that has wallet addresses where you can support in crypto. And with that, we will see you here next week, same time. We got more? What we got?
I just wanted to share to check out the chat, and we have our Spanish Legion of Rome.
Oh, sweet.
They have set up their own Metaverse Nomads named
You're gonna have to link that, man.
Nomads.
Nobody's typing that in.
I didn't. No, it should be clickable, but if it isn't, just copy and paste.
Go back that link. What we need you to do right now is we need you to go to www.twitch.tv/series ID
and make sure you follow it, because if you know anybody who's Hispanic, or if you are yourself, and it just might be too much to listen for 3 hours of English, it could help you learn. But we have our Hispanic Legion, South American, and definitely give them a follow. It was they created this on their own whim, so the innovation of Rome is just incredible to me, and we're just throwing the link out there to show some support. They live on Twitch. They also have a YouTube channel, but they do what we do, but essentially in Hispanic, in Espanol. So definitely check them out and support. Follow Rome.
In your
Subscribe.
defense, Ray, it is the link is clickable in YouTube.
There you
it's
go.
fine.
Yeah,
but we'll also add it to the description because those are our guys.
Nice.
No, yeah, it's definitely clickable. But appreciate you all for watching, and that's all for me.
Awesome. Anyone else got anything?
Thank
There
you
you go.
for listening to our 30th episode, guys.
We hit a milestone. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Indeed.
We're all gonna make it.
Indeed. All right, guys. We will see you same time, same bat channel next week. Peace out.
Atlas Minor, you were born to push the block in search of ore. And now it's time that you are gone. So farewell, Atlas Minor. And farewell, Mud and Oni too. Who's the sector same to you? The pirate bastards ran him through. So farewell, Atlas Minor. They promised you a diamond mine, but I'll be damned, it's hard to find. I hope there's justice for their crimes. So farewell, Atlas Minor. Farewell, friend, don't take it hard. Getting killed ain't all that bad. They'll treat you well in the repair yard. So farewell, Atlas Minor.